Chapter 241. Hee, Maya-same, try and catch me. Wang Chong turned around and smiled, revealing a row of snow-white teeth amidst the darkness. Gongzi, I won't stand on ceremony then. Hearing Wang Chong's words, Maya-same Ayaka chuckled. She was also interested to see how much Wang Chong had improved after his breakthrough. Even though Wang Chong's movement technique seemed to be even more profound than hers, Maya-same Ayaka was still confident that she could take him down. After all, the difference in strength between the two of them was clear for all to see. Even though Wang Chong had crossed blows with her twice, neither of them were fair and square. The first time was through trickery, and the second time was when she was severely injured by Li Zhuxin. In terms of strength, Maya-same Ayaka wasn't inferior to Wang Chong. Gongzi, I'm coming. Maya-same Ayaka smiled, and the corners of her eyes curled up slightly. So. Without any warning, the light at the entrance warped for a moment, and like a specter, Maya-same Ayaka melted into the void, vanishing from the spot. To comprehend the essence of the specter's steps, one would be akin to a specter wandering in the night, making it difficult for one to discern it with the naked eye. Even experts stronger than oneself would only be able to see a faint shadow, reminiscent of a transparent specter. This was also the origin of the name Specter Steps. Gongzi, I've caught you. Just a few feet from Wang Chong, Maya-same Ayaka revealed a victorious smile beneath her black veil. Even though Wang Chong was talented, he was still far from matching up to her. Maya-same, are you certain? A light chuckle sounded in the darkness. The source of the chuckle was erratic, but it didn't originate from where Maya-same Ayaka was standing. Maya-same Ayaka's face warped. She immediately knew that the situation had changed. Shwa. In an instant, Maya-same Ayaka's speed abruptly increased, and she abruptly reached out to grab Wang Chong. However, a flash of light abruptly appeared, and Maya-same Ayaka's grasp missed. He disappeared. Maya-same Ayaka's eyes narrowed as her face warped in shock. She didn't think that her sure-kill attack would actually fail. She was also a true martial realm expert, so she immediately understood the meaning behind this strike. For Wang Chong to be able to dodge her attack in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, there was only one way to do it, and that was if his speed was faster than hers. How is this possible? Maya-same Ayaka's eyes were filled with disbelief. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Although she never dared to look down on Wang Chong, this fact was too shocking. But what was even more shocking was that just 3 zhang away, Maya-same Ayaka saw 3 identical Wang Chong, and all 3 of them were smiling at her. Young master, how did you do it? Maya-same Ayaka exclaimed in shock. These 3 Wang Chong didn't exude the slightest aura, and with Maya-same Ayaka's sharp senses, it was impossible for her to discern them. Hee, this is called phantom steps. Even further away, in the darkness, Wang Chong appeared from beneath another broken wall. The moment he appeared, the 3 phantoms vanished as well. What you see are only my remnant phantoms. My cultivation is still lacking, so I can only leave behind 3 phantoms at the same time. If I were stronger, I would be able to split into a dozen, 20, or even 60 to 70 phantoms. With his hands behind his back, Wang Chong walked out from beneath the broken wall with a confident and composed expression. But why haven't I heard of it before? Maya-same Ayaka asked doubtfully. It would be a wonder if you knew. Wang Chong chuckled inwardly. Of course, the true phantom steps wasn't as formidable as this. However, Wang Chong had modified it to a certain extent, fusing it with the tortoise-breathing art. This made up for the weakness of phantoms being easily seen through. After all, even the aura of Wang Chong couldn't be detected, needless to say, these 3 phantoms. Maya-same Ayaka was perplexed, but it was true that Wang Chong's cultivation technique was formidable. Let's go. I might need your help this time. Without saying anything else, Wang Chong turned around and walked into the depths of the darkness. Having reached Origin Energy Tier 8 and successfully cultivated the Phantom Steps, Wang Chong's agility, speed, and strength were all at the same time. At this point, he had already achieved minor accomplishment in his martial arts. And now, Wang Chong was determined to challenge the difficulty of the second Goguryeo base. I should head to the second Goguryeo base to take a look. A thought flashed across Wang Chong's mind, and he soon disappeared into the darkness. Deep in the night, at 4:00 in the morning, the capital was quiet as everyone slept soundly. Other than the patrolling Imperial Army soldiers and drunkards, there was no one else on the streets. In a remote area in the northeast corner of the capital, a one-eyed fatty, dressed in a wide-sleeved robe and the attire of a minister-counselor, was walking over from the edge. Even though he was disguised as an ordinary merchant, his footsteps were forceful. His muscular arms were subconsciously placed on his waist, which was completely incompatible with his disguise. Who? All of a sudden, a loud noise was heard. The one-eyed fatty's body tensed up, and he immediately turned his gaze toward the source of the sound warily. Not too far away, a 15 to 16-year-old youngster suddenly walked out from the forest. That youngster was leaning against a tree trunk with his arms crossed, and a cold sneer appeared on his face. Goguryeo. The youngster's lips moved, and he suddenly uttered 4 words in Goguryeo. Hearing these 4 words, the one-eyed fatty's expression changed dramatically, as if he had been greatly humiliated, and his expression suddenly became ferocious. Bastard! There was no one around. The one-eyed fatty gritted his teeth and with a hua-la sound, he took off the minister-counselor's robe and removed the Han disguise on his body. Beneath the loose robe, 3 Goguryeo sabers were revealed as well. You're courting death. The one-eyed fatty's face turned cold. Holding the 3rd saber under his ribs, his movements were inconceivably agile. Shwa! The moment he took off his outer robe, the one-eyed fatty stomped on the ground and charged toward Wang Chong like an arrow released from a bow. In an instant, he covered a distance of a dozen zhang. In that instant, the one-eyed fatty's speed was inconceivable. Wang! Seeing the one-eyed fatty's superior martial arts, the youngster seemed to have been frightened. His body trembled, and he hurriedly retreated into the forest. You're only thinking of escaping now. It's too late. The one-eyed fatty was as swift as a blink of an eye, and killing intent burst forth from his remaining eye. Shwa shwa. Before he could even reach the other party, 2 incomparably sharp saber chi were already flying toward him. Kacha! 2 massive trees abruptly snapped, and the cracks were as smooth as a mirror. Die! The saber chi was swift, but the one-eyed fatty was even faster. In the blink of an eye, he had already entered the forest. Chi! Chi! Almost at the same instant the one-eyed fatty entered the forest, 2 figures charged toward him from the left and right. Mayasame Ayaka's speed was incredible, and the dagger in her hand shot toward the one-eyed fatty. At the same time, Wang Chong executed phantom steps and arrived at the same time. Chi! Without any hesitation, a blinding sword chi of massacre burst forth from the tip of the little yin-yang sword. Boom! The one-eyed fatty reacted swiftly. Almost at the same instant that Wang Chong executed the sword chi of massacre, he released his Jinchi, and a powerful deluge of stellar energy burst forth. Unlike the deluge of stellar energy of an Origin Energy Tier 9 expert, the one-eyed fatty's stellar energy was clearly much stronger. Jolted by the deluge of stellar energy, Wang Chong's sword chi of massacre weakened significantly. However, the sword chi of massacre was still invincible. Even the stellar energy of a true martial realm expert was able to pierce through it. You brat, to think that you still have such a move. The one-eyed fatty sensed that something was amiss. Without even thinking, he slashed out with his saber. Boom! A saber chi directly shattered Wang Chong's sword chi of massacre. At the same time, he slashed out with his hand, and a saber sword flew toward Wang Chong. Saber chi. Wang Chong was astonished. Unlike the other Goguryeo warriors he had come into contact with before, this fatty had actually managed to cultivate saber chi. His slaughter sword chi was shaken by the astral chi and then slashed by the saber chi, causing it to dissipate. Who? With no time to think, Wang Chong had no choice but to dodge the other party's powerful saber chi. A true martial realm expert possessed incredible strength, and he wasn't a match for them at the moment. Hong Long. Almost at the same instant that Wang Chong was sent flying, a saber chi struck the spot where Wang Chong had been standing a moment ago. With a loud boom, dirt flew into the air, and a crack of 6 to 7 zhang long appeared on the ground. Ah! At the same instant that Wang Chong dodged, Mayasame Ayaka also clashed with the one-eyed fatty. With a chi sound, the clothes on the one-eyed fatty's shoulder were torn apart, revealing a deep wound several inches deep. However, with a loud bellow, the one-eyed fatty's 3 sabers dashed forward like a whirlwind. Using his ferocious aura and vicious fighting style, he was actually able to suppress Mayasame Ayaka. As an assassin, Mayasame Ayaka specialized in agility, speed, and killing with a single blow. She was completely different from warriors like the one-eyed fatty, who preferred to fight head-on. Facing the one-eyed fatty's ferocious fighting style, Mayasame Ayaka was actually unable to utilize her footwork for the time being. She could only use the specter steps to change her position. That fellow is strong. When Wang Chong saw this sight, he was inwardly shocked. This was the first time he was facing a true martial realm expert as an origin energy realm cultivator. The one-eyed fatty was far more difficult to deal with than he had expected. From the looks of it, Mayasame Ayaka didn't have much of a chance against Zhang Xian's ruthless 3-saber stream, where he was risking his life for his own. Who? Without any hesitation, Wang Chong executed the phantom steps and executed the hexad arms technique. This time, a single sword chi split into 6, and each of them was as thick as a finger, shooting toward different parts of the one-eyed fatty's body. On the other side, Mayasame Ayaka had also pushed the specter steps to its limits, and she surrounded the one-eyed fatty, launching a flurry of attacks at him. Ha ha ha, you two fellows, do you think that you can deal with me just like that? Die! Halo of Swamp. All of a sudden, a burst of laughter echoed in the ears of the duo. Before he could finish his words, the aura around the one-eyed fatty abruptly changed, and a halo accompanied by stellar energy burst forth. However, unlike the green halo of thorns that Wang Chong had seen before, the halo beneath the one-eyed fatty's feet was actually gray in color. Chapter 242. Not good. Upon seeing this halo, Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka's faces warped. They knew that they had kicked a metal plate this time around. The halo of Meyer was a mutated halo unique to Goguryeo. In essence, it was a strength halo, but due to the unique environment of Goguryeo, it came with the muddy effect. Not only could it boost one's strength, it could also slow down the movements of one's opponents. Only a handful of elites in Goguryeo possessed such a halo. Wang Chong had intended for Mayasame Ayaka to pick the weaker true martial realm cultivators, but from the looks of it, she had miscalculated. Gongzi, be careful. Mayasame Ayaka also realized that she had made a mistake in her judgment. The other party was clearly much stronger than she had thought. It seemed like she had made a mistake. Ha ha ha, you two thieves. Recently, a dozen or so cultivators suddenly vanished from the face of the earth in the first base. I don't know if they're still alive or dead. You must be the culprit, right? The one-eyed fatty laughed heartily, but this time, he spoke in the language of the Central Plains. His only eye was bright and shrewd. He wasn't a fool. He could tell that the two fellows before him were intentionally provoking him to lure him here. Thinking back to the disappearance of the warriors not too long ago, he could already guess what was going on. Die! The one-eyed fatty roared in laughter. Around him, mountains collapsed and tsunamis roared. The air seemed to be stirred up by an invisible force, and as though tons of mud, it charged toward Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka with the might of a thunderbolt. The halo of a true martial realm expert wasn't just for show. It harnessed the laws of nature, allowing one to tap into the power of nature and exert strength far beyond one's own. At this moment, his strength had completely suppressed Mayasame Ayaka and Wang Chong. Boom! 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 At the same time that he activated the halo of Meyer, the one-eyed fatty laughed heartily. With 3 sabers in his hands, he charged toward Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka with the momentum of a thunderbolt. He had intentionally waited for Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka to approach him before activating the halo of swamp. He wanted to catch them off guard and trap them within his power of swamp, preventing them from escaping. For at least 10 breaths, Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka wouldn't be able to escape swiftly. 10 breaths were enough to do a lot of things. Pay with your life for the warriors of the empire. The one-eyed fatty seemed to have gone berserk, and his 3 broadswords rained down on Mayasame Ayaka and Wang Chong. In just an instant, Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka had fallen into a bitter battle. Be it Mayasame Ayaka's Spectre Steps or Wang Chong's Phantom Steps, they were both outstanding speed-type secret arts. However, the one-eyed fatty's Quagmire Aura coincidentally countered them. The more powerful a speed-type absolute art was, the faster its speed would decrease when it encountered an external environment that restrained it. For example, if an ordinary person were to fall into a swamp, the most they would be able to do was to shift. On the other hand, if a swift cheetah were to fall into a swamp, its speed would be reduced by a significant amount. This was the situation that Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka were in at the moment. Yi! A sharp whistle suddenly sounded from afar. Wang Chong's heart skipped a beat. This was the signal that he had agreed upon with the master archer sent by the King of Song. As long as he responded with a sharp whistle, the other party would immediately reinforce him from afar. Given that fellow's strength, there was a high chance that he would severely injure the Goguryeo elite. But Wang Chong didn't want to do so. All master archers were prideful individuals, and the more formidable they were, the more arrogant they were. If he were to fail in his first challenge against a true martial realm opponent, the other party would surely look down on him. As long as he harbored such thoughts, it wouldn't be easy to mobilize him in the future. And Wang Chong still had many opportunities to mobilize him in the future. No matter what, I have to find a way to defeat him first. If I'm not a match for him, it won't be too late to get him to make a move then. Wang Chong thought. The master archer at the rear was an important force in his plan. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Wang Chong didn't want to use him easily. Besides, if he were to make the other party look down on him, it would be fine under normal circumstances. However, if he were to make a mistake in a critical situation where he needed his help, he would lose his life. So, Wang Chong executed the single-character consecutive slash, and by a hair's breadth, he dodged the fatty's 2 consecutive slashes. While dodging, Wang Chong still managed to send out 2 surges of sword chi of massacre, but they were all blocked by the other party's sword chi. The other party's halo of bog was extremely powerful, and it had an obvious effect on phantom steps. However, Wang Chong didn't just have phantom steps. His single-character consecutive slash was propelled by his origin energy, so it wasn't as affected by the air bog. On the other hand, Mayasame Ayaka's martial arts were superior to Wang Chong's, but at this moment, the restriction on her was greater than Wang Chong's. Pang! Under the control of the one-eyed fatty, the air swamp struck the ground like a heavy mountain, causing rumbling sounds to echo in the air. Mayasame Ayaka staggered, and her body was drenched in sweat. Unable to react in time, the saber chi struck her left shoulder, tearing it apart and tearing a deep gash in it. Fresh blood spurted out from the wound. Ha ha ha, lass, you must be from the Eastern Islands, right? The people of the Central Plains aren't like you. Hee hee, once I capture you, I'll bring you back to the base to enjoy myself. The one-eyed fatty roared with laughter. Mayasame Ayaka was both embarrassed and furious. A single mistake had resulted in her being struck once more. Mayasame, left, 3 cun below my waist. At this moment, a firm and decisive voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Mayasame Ayaka's mind was in a mess, but upon hearing this voice, it was as if she had been infused with energy, and her mind suddenly cleared up. 3 cun below my waist? Humph, brat, do you think that you can succeed? Upon hearing Wang Chang's words, the one-eyed fatty's body tensed up as he instinctively felt threatened. But in the next instant, he burst into laughter. With his current strength, it was impossible for the two of them to get close to him. Even if they were to discover his weakness, it would be futile. Brat, your martial arts might not be high, but your movement technique sure is slippery. I was thinking of killing her first before killing you. But since you want to die so badly, I'll grant your wish. The one-eyed fatty's face was savage, and he abruptly turned his head around. Wang Chang's words had roused his killing intent. Even if he had to suffer a few slashes from Mayasame Ayaka, he would kill this fellow who threatened him first. I would like to see how you're going to stab 3 cun below my left waist. Hong Long, the world spun. In an instant, a huge amount of muddy air, along with the 3 Goguryan sabers, stirred up a powerful wave of stellar energy and charged toward Wang Chong at lightning speed. This attack was as powerful as a tsunami crashing onto the shore. If he were to be struck, Wang Chong would surely die. Humph. In the face of the one-eyed fatty's murderous move, Wang Chong remained standing on the spot, the corners of his lips curling into a cold smile. The reason why he didn't allow the archers to make a move was because he still had a trump card up his sleeves. In the next instant, without any hesitation, Wang Chong released the bane of the battlefield halo. Wang, a formless ripple spread out. There was no movement in the surroundings, but there seemed to be the rumbling of thunder in the depths of the void. Wang! Before the one-eyed fatty could react, a strange white ripple appeared around his body. When the white ripples appeared, that unique power exploded in the void. Boom! Without the slightest warning, at least 2/3 of the muddy air that the one-eyed fatso had conjured suddenly exploded. It was a feeling of power being sucked out. Even the yuan qi in the one-eyed fatso's body suddenly stagnated, pausing for a moment. As for the surrounding origin energy of the mud, it was also greatly weakened. This? The one-eyed fatty was so frightened that his soul left his body, and his entire face turned pale. He had been stationed in the Central Plains for 6 to 7 years now, but he had never encountered such a situation. This kind of situation where his strength was reduced, which he had never experienced before, simply caught him off guard. For his origin energy to suddenly go out of control in the midst of an intense battle, he understood what it meant. It was precisely because of this that his face turned even paler. In a battle between experts, every second counted. Why would there be such a huge opening? This is a good chance. Sensing the change in the surrounding origin energy of the mud, Mayasame Ayaka immediately grasped this rare opportunity. Puchi! Fresh blood splattered as a dagger stabbed 3 inches below the left side of the one-eyed fatty's waist. The dagger had pierced in from one side and came out from the other. Puchi! At the same time, Wang Chang's sword chi of massacre pierced through the right side of the one-eyed fatty's chest. After the sword chi, Wang Chang's phantom movement art reached its maximum speed, and the little yin-yang sword pierced through the one-eyed fatty's heart. Ah! The one-eyed fatty's only eye widened in shock. His hands were still in an offensive stance, and his face was filled with disbelief. Even in death, he didn't understand how he had died. How could such an inconceivable phenomenon occur? Along with the one-eyed fatty's death, a vast surge of origin energy more powerful than any he had felt before flowed into Wang Chang's body through the little yin-yang sword. Ah! Closing his eyes, Wang Chong exclaimed softly. Nourished by this surge of energy, Wang Chong felt his blood boiling. What incredible strength! A true martial realm cultivator was far superior to an origin energy realm cultivator. Wang Chong could feel that the benefits he had received far exceeded any of his previous experiences. The intensity of his origin energy had grown significantly, and the speed at which it flowed had also increased significantly. Even his strength had grown significantly. This was something that Wang Cheng's bitter cultivation couldn't compare to. The great yin-yang heaven creation art was known as the #1 cultivation technique in the world, and Wang Cheng had already comprehended its profundities. There was no cultivation technique in the world that could raise one's cultivation faster than this. At this rate, I should be able to advance my cultivation to Origin Energy Tier 9 in less than a month. Wang Cheng thought. Upon reaching Origin Energy Tier 9, one would be able to externalize one's origin energy, and Wang Cheng would be able to cultivate even more advanced martial arts, such as the 100 Steps Divine Fist. Furthermore, upon reaching Origin Energy Tier 9 Pinnacle, one would be able to comprehend the power of laws, and one would be able to convert origin energy into stellar energy. Every single move of his would produce white ripples, and along with the tremors, the might of his attacks would be enhanced significantly. On the path of martial arts, Origin Energy Tier 1 would be nothing more than a toddler learning to walk. Only upon reaching Origin Energy Tier 9 would one be considered to have reached Origin Energy Major Accomplishment, and only then would one be able to reach higher and stronger realms. Chapter 243. Mayasame Ayaka was keenly aware of the changes in Wang Cheng. However, she was smart enough not to ask about it. Gongzi, the situation is getting complicated. It seems like the Gogurians are starting to suspect something. Mayasame Ayaka said with a hint of worry in her eyes. No matter how discreet the two of them were, the Gogurians weren't fools. It would be a wonder if they didn't suspect something when so many of their men had vanished without a trace. Wang Cheng discreetly retracted his little yin-yang art, and a dark cloud flashed across his forehead. But very soon, Wang Cheng regained his composure. Hee, what's the point of thinking so much? We'll just deal with whatever comes our way. Even if the Gogurians have their suspicions, they don't know how they died or where they died in the city. This is also the reason why I chose to make a move after they left the base. As long as we don't make a move in their base, they won't be able to ascertain whether we have discovered their base or not. In fact, they might even think that it was a coincidence. Wang Cheng said. The Gogurians were too confident. They thought that the Tang dynasty wouldn't be able to find them. After all, the Gogurians had always kept a distance between the light and the dark. Those in the light wouldn't do anything that went against the laws of the Tang dynasty. Even if the Tang dynasty sent men to monitor them 24 hours a day, they would only realize that they were the most obedient citizens. On the other hand, those in the dark would disguise themselves as merchants, bodyguards, and so on. They would frequent the taverns, and gambling dens of the Gogurians, and they would try their best not to speak. If they were to speak, they would only speak in the language of the Central Plains. This way, even if the royal court were to find them, it would be impossible for them to do so. Thus, it would be impossible for them to find their base. This was because their base wasn't in the Gogurian territory in the west of the city. This was what the Gogurians were proud of and confident of. They made full use of the weakness of the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments. However, to Wang Cheng, the pride and self-confidence that they had developed over a long period of time was exactly what he could use. No matter how many people he killed, as long as he didn't kill anyone in the base, Wang Cheng wasn't afraid that they would find out. Even if they had their suspicions, Wang Cheng was not afraid. However, as long as they have doubts, they will be more cautious in the future. In the future, it might not be so easy. Mayasame Ayaka disagreed. The Gogurians wielded great influence in the Central Plains, surpassing all other powers aside from the Tang dynasty. If he didn't have some ability, it would be impossible. So be it. The enemy is out in the open and we are in the dark. Do you think that we can't defeat them with our strength? Don't forget, we also have a lot of trump cards we haven't used yet. Wang Cheng smiled. Mayasame Ayaka was taken aback for a moment before understanding his intentions. Indeed, Wang Cheng had more than one person on his side. Knowing that Mayasame Ayaka understood his intentions, Wang Cheng didn't say anything. Instead, he bent down and searched the one-eyed fatty's body. Very quickly, Wang Chong took out 2 brocade boxes from his body. Each of the 2 brocade boxes contained a 400-year-old golden ginseng. As expected, almost every single one of these Gogurians has a ginseng on them. Even though this wasn't the first time he had encountered such a situation, Wang Chong still couldn't help but be impressed. The wealth of the Gogurians in this aspect was truly unimaginable. Ginseng with several hundred years of maturity was extremely rare in the Central Plains, but almost every single Gogurian had one. As long as one was a Gogurian warrior, Wang Chong would be able to find such ginseng. From this, it could be seen how quickly the Gogurian Empire nurtured experts. Closing the 2 brocade boxes once more, Wang Chong kept the 2 400-year-old ginseng into his robe without any hesitation. Right, Gongzi, what's a Gogurian? All of a sudden, a doubtful voice sounded from the side. Hearing Mayasame Ayaka's voice, Wang Chong staggered and nearly fell to the ground. Cough, cough. Mayasame Ayaka, what did you just say? Wang Chong stared at Mayasame Ayaka with a bizarre expression, and he nearly choked on his own saliva. My Gogurian standard isn't high, and I don't know much of the Gogurian language either. I can only recognize a few words, but I don't know what they mean. By the side, Mayasame Ayaka was frowning with a troubled look on her face, as though she was trying very hard to recall. But if I didn't hear wrongly, Gongzi should have said Gogurian, right? What does that mean? Why is that fellow so angry? Is there such a saying in the Central Plains? Mayasame Ayaka was perplexed. When Wang Chong left, he had only said those 4 words, but that one-eyed fatty seemed to have been greatly agitated. Without any hesitation, he immediately chased after Mayasame Ayaka. This had left a deep impression on her. This, looking at Mayasame Ayaka's serious expression, Wang Chong felt as if his cancer of awkwardness was about to erupt. His first thought was that Mayasame Ayaka was teasing him, but looking at her expression, Wang Chong knew that he was wrong. She was definitely serious about this matter. How would he know what it meant? In any case, it was a curse from another world. Wang Chong had only picked it up casually, but he didn't expect it to be so useful. That Gogurian stick immediately fell for it without any hesitation. At that time, he was so used that he forgot that there was no such saying in this world. How could such a thing be easily explained? About this, I forgot for a moment that we still have something to do. Well, let's hurry up and go. How could Wang Chong dare to tangle with Mayasame Ayaka? He quickly found an excuse and left. Gazing at Wang Chong's back, Mayasame Ayaka was perplexed for a moment before realization dawned on her, and her lips curled up into a smile. While Wang Chong was planning to hunt down the Gogurian warriors in the capital, on the other side, the debate regarding Zhangqiu Jianqiong had reached its climax. After a month of silence, a famous minister of the Tang dynasty, the eldest son of Duke Jiu, and an influential official of the Tang dynasty, Wang Zhen, expressed his full support for Zhangqiu Jianqiong to take over the position of Minister of War. This was the first time an influential official of the royal court had expressed his support for Zhangqiu Jianqiong. The matter of Zhangqiu Jianqiong being promoted to the capital and becoming the ruler of the royal court had been thought to be hopeless for more than a month. However, Wang Zhen's stance had turned the situation around, and the situation had taken a turn for the better. As everyone knew, as an influential official of the royal court, Wang Zhen had always been cautious in his actions, and he rarely took the initiative to express his stance before the situation was clear. As such, Wang Zhen's statement had caught the attention of many. It was believed that he represented the stance of the entire Wang clan and the king of Song. Ever since Duke Jiu abdicated, the Wang clan's influence had waned. However, after the regional commander's incident, no one dared to look down on the Wang clan anymore. No one dared to look down on them. On the contrary, in everyone's view, not only did the Wang clan's influence not decline after the regional commander's incident, it even reached an even higher level of prestige. In fact, it was even greater than when Duke Jiu was still on the throne. This was because the Wang clan had won the respect of a group that they had never won before. The military. Even though Duke Jiao had led troops and fought in battles, he had never been a proper soldier. As such, when Duke Jiao was still on the throne, he had only won the respect of a small portion of the military. However, the regional commanders system had allowed the Wang clan to win the respect of almost all of the Han generals. As such, Wang Zhen's stance was not to be underestimated. On top of that, with the existence of the King of Song, the Wang clan had become a powerful faction that no one dared to underestimate. The fact that Zhangqiu Jianqiong was able to win the support of this group changed the situation. Ha ha ha, Yang Zhao has indeed made a move. With the Wang clan's help, there's a 60% chance that I will be able to enter the central court. It seems like I didn't help them in the regional commander's incident in vain. In the distant Annan Protectorate manor, Zhangqiu Jianqiong was dressed in heavy armor. A bonfire burned in front of him as he looked at the letter he had received from the north and laughed heartily. Soldiers are nurtured for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. Regardless of whether it was Yang Zhao or the Wang clan, it was finally time for him to reap the fruits of his labor. Congratulations, General. Hearing Zhangqiu Jianqiong's words, a huge commotion broke out in the surroundings. The elite soldiers and commanders knelt down one after another, lowering their heads to the ground. They were overjoyed for Zhangqiu Jianqiong. Zhangqiu Jianqiong hadn't returned empty-handed after several decades at the borders. After serving as the Annan Protector General for so many years, Zhangqiu Jianqiong had gathered a large group of loyal and powerful experts. Every single one of these people before him was willing to die for him. Furthermore, every single one of them was a tycoon who could shake an entire region. This was what he was truly proud of. With these people, he would be able to secure his position even if he were to head to a place like the capital. He wouldn't just be the Minister of War in name only, just like some of his predecessors. Xianyu Zhongtong, after I retire, the position of Annan Protector General will be yours. You should make some preparations as well. After some time, we'll head to the capital together. If you wish to succeed as the Annan Protector General, there are some people you can't afford to not get acquainted with. These people will be of great help to you in the future. As he spoke, Zhangqiu Jianqiong suddenly turned around to look at a brawny man with an honest face and a full beard. This man had a well-built body, and he was dressed in the attire of a general. He knelt on the ground with a serious expression on his face. Yes, Lord. Xianyu Zhongtong knelt on the ground and said seriously. Zhangqiu Jianqiong nodded in satisfaction. Xianyu Zhongtong didn't have many strong points. His only strong point was that he was loyal and reliable. He was able to faithfully and perfectly carry out any of the strategies he had arranged. He was the classic example of a general who defended what he had won. As long as nothing happened in Jiannan, Xianyu Zhongtong was more than qualified to become the Annan Protector General. More importantly, Xianyu Zhongtong was his subordinate. As long as the Annan Protectorate was under his control, the 180,000 elite soldiers stationed in Jiannan would be under his control. This would be his greatest asset in the Bureau of Military Personnel. Chapter 244. Ha ha ha, the Wang clan has really stepped forward. In the royal palace, Yang Zhao's hands were trembling in excitement as he read the news he had just received. This time, Zhangqiu Jianqiong will really be promoted to the position of Minister of War. Little sister, we will no longer be helpless in the royal palace. Zhangqiu Jianqiong was the talk of the royal court, and the one who would benefit in the end was also Zhangqiu Jianqiong. However, there was one person who was even more excited than Zhangqiu Jianqiong, and that person was Yang Zhao. As long as Zhangqiu Jianqiong enters the royal court, I, Yang Zhao, will be able to rise to the top and become a high official. Yang Zhao clenched the letter in his hand so tightly that the veins on the back of his fists were bulging. As the saying went, a call to the skies, the people will respond, and Yang Zhao was currently in a state where no one would respond. He wanted a high position and a generous salary, but Yang Zhao knew that his qualifications were too shallow. Every single one of those bigwigs in the royal court had probably investigated him thoroughly. Only by helping Zhangqiu Jianqiong to the throne would he truly be able to rise to the top. Cousin, it seems like that little brother of yours has already stepped in to help us. At least it wasn't in vain that we helped him back then. A pleasant voice, reminiscent of a pearl falling on a jade plate, sounded from behind him. It was Consort Taizhen's voice. Hee, isn't that right? Hearing Consort Taizhen's words, Yang Zhao couldn't help but chuckle. Back then, when I was in dire straits, everyone in the gambling den mocked me. Yet, he gave me 1,000 gold taels without even asking a single question. For him to possess such boldness and means at such a young age, his future is bound to be limitless. Later on, when I learned that he was Duke Zhou's grandson, I was even more certain of this. Little sister, you should be able to feel this more vividly than me. Seated on the golden couch, Consort Taizhen couldn't help but chuckle upon hearing those words. Wang Chang's 3 poems had established her reputation as the #1 beauty in the palace. Even this reputation had slowly spread out of the palace along with the 3 poems. Consort Taizhen naturally knew this better than anyone else. Although Consort Taizhen was quite confident in her beauty, sometimes, beauty wasn't enough to make her the most beautiful woman in the world. Cousin is right. But I haven't seen him yet. Consort Taizhen chuckled, and her tone became much gentler. Consort Taizhen had special feelings for this young man from the Wang clan, who had expressed his admiration for her in the poem, caused a huge uproar in the court, and was even imprisoned in the imperial prison. It wasn't love, but she did have a good impression of him. It was completely different from how she looked at other youths. Hee, this fellow is currently in the training camp. If little sister wants to see him, there will be plenty of opportunities. Yang Zhao recalled the few times he had met Wang Chong, and his heart was filled with emotions. It's a pity that the Wang clan is too powerful. Otherwise, I would really want to pull him over. However, it's good that he's around. With the strength of the Wang clan and the King of Song, as well as Zhangqiu Jianqiong's arrival, little sister, you won't be alone in the palace anymore. Yang Zhao said happily. Consort Taizhen nodded and nodded in agreement. A step too late. Yao Guangyi slammed his fists onto the table with a livid expression. He had been trying his best to rope in Yang Zhao and Consort Taizhen. Zhangqiu Jianqiong was one of the opportunities he had been trying his best to win over. But he didn't expect the Wang clan to beat him to it. Zhangqiu Jianqiong was an outsider, and a ferocious dragon crossing the river posed a threat to all of the hegemons in the river. This was also the reason why no one stood up for him despite the long dispute over Zhangqiu Jianqiong. Everyone had chosen to remain silent on this matter. The Wang clan had been silent for a long time, so Yao Guangyi had always thought that they were against it. They were afraid that Zhangqiu Jianqiong would come to the capital. But he didn't expect Wang Zhen to stand up so decisively. I've been fooled by them. Veins were popping on Yao Guangyi's forehead, and his complexion was awful. How could he not understand that he had been hoodwinked by the Wang clan? If the Wang clan had openly supported Zhangqiu Jianqiong from the start, everyone in the capital would have surely opposed them. But now, not only did no one criticize them, Zhangqiu Jianqiong even owed him a huge favor. He was just a step too slow, and he had lost this opportunity forever. Zhangqiu Jianqiong would remember the first one who supported him, but he wouldn't care too much about the second or third. Such decisiveness definitely isn't Wang Zhen's style. Wang Chong. It must be that lad again. Killing intent surged in Yao Guangyi's eyes. I was still a step too slow. Yao Guangyi wasn't the only one sighing. In a residence in the center of the capital, a slender figure sighed as he slowly put down the letter in his hands. Wang Chong was oblivious to the changes in the royal court. At this moment, Wang Chong's attention was completely focused on killing the Goguryeo warriors. Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka worked together to hunt down these targets. The death of every true martial realm Gogurian warrior would provide Wang Chong with a large amount of origin energy. In a short period of time, Wang Chong had killed a large number of true martial realm experts, and his strength had risen to a whole new level. His strength, speed, and dexterity had all increased significantly, and he wasn't too far off from reaching origin energy tier 9. Unknowingly, another 3 to 4 days passed. Deep in the night, the winds howled, and the surroundings were sparsely populated. At the border of the capital, where few people could be seen, a figure dressed in a robe walked slowly. Judging from his appearance, he was dressed like someone from the Central Plains. However, his walking posture was a little awkward, and one could tell that he was a little unnatural. Boom! Just as that person walked to a lush maple tree by the side of the road, boom! A cold gleam flashed, and as though a bolt of lightning, a sword gleam struck the top of that person's head. At the same time, close to the ground, a pitch-black silhouette of a sword pierced toward the back of that person's waist as though a venomous snake. The two figures moved in tandem with one another, and they seemed to have a tacit understanding of one another. Boom! In the instant that he was ambushed, the person didn't panic. Instead, he pulled out his sword with both hands. At the same time that he drew the sword, a ring of light shot out, and a majestic torrent of energy swept out mightily, covering the heavens and the earth. Boom boom boom. Stellar energy clashed with a sword, but the only sound it produced was the clash of swords against swords. In fact, one could even vaguely hear sparks flying in the air. It was as if the surging torrent was not formless and formless stellar energy, but a saber-shaped sword. Halo of sharpness. Upon mastering this halo, one's stellar energy would become as sharp as swords. This Gogurian warrior was executing this halo of sharpness, and it was also a variant halo of the true martial realm. Under the collision of the halo and the 3 consecutive slashes, Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka were forced to retreat. Ha ha ha, I wasn't wrong. You really took the bait. That person didn't pursue them. Instead, he pointed a saber at Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka and laughed heartily, as though his scheme had succeeded. Gongzi, it's a trap. Mayasame Ayaka's eyes narrowed upon hearing the other party's words. She immediately sensed that something was amiss. Ha ha ha, not bad. It's indeed a trap. But it's a pity that it's too late. Come out. That person exerted strength at his waist, and with a chila sound, his clothes were torn apart, revealing a Gogurian warrior's attire. At the same time, he waved his hands grandly. Walala, 3 figures immediately rushed out from the forest and surrounded Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka. These 3 people were all experienced true martial realm experts, and each of them carried a powerful aura. Even one of them was enough to make Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka worry for a long time. Now that the 4 of them had appeared together, Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka were immediately placed in a disadvantageous position. I'm just the bait, and they are the real attack. Since you can't even defeat me, you won't be a match for them. Hee hee, no matter what you do now, the only thing awaiting you is death. That person laughed heartily as a sinister glint flashed in his eyes. As the experts of the second base, they reacted much faster than the others. The sudden disappearance of a true martial realm expert wasn't a small matter. Almost immediately, they realized the severity of the matter. Even though they couldn't confirm the truth, they still quickly came up with a plan. The 4 of them formed a group, with 1 in the open and 3 in the shadows. The one in the open was the bait. This way, they could probe the other party's strength, and at the same time, they could keep an eye on one another to prevent any problems from arising. Just that, the man didn't expect them to be so lucky. It had only been a few days, and they had already encountered a bait. Hee hee hee, to dare to play tricks before us, you're just asking for it. Once we capture you, I'll see for myself what your background is and who's behind you all. The man laughed heartily as he stared at Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka as though they were already corpses. Gongzi, what do we do now? Cold sweat seeped out of Mayasame Ayaka's eyes. Regardless of whether it was in terms of strength or numbers, these people had the upper hand. With their strength alone, it was impossible for them to defeat so many people. Don't worry, there's no need to worry. Wang Chong replied with a relaxed expression. Go, capture them all. If any problems arise, it's fine even if we kill them. He could only hear the voices of the two people in his ears. Hong Long. As though announcing Wang Chang's death, the man waved his hand, and 3 true martial realm experts of the Goguryeo Empire, along with him, gathered 3 powerful stellar energy torrents. Before these stellar energy torrents, even Wang Chong and Myasame Ayaka's origin energy paled in comparison. Yi. Without any hesitation, the moment the 4 of them drew their sabers, Wang Chong let out a deafening howl. Go! This howl wasn't directed at Myasame Ayaka, but someone in the distance. Hong Long. Without any hesitation, Wang Chong immediately released his Bane of the Battlefield Halo. Chapter 245. The Bane of the Battlefield. Wang Chong was getting more and more familiar with the usage of this halo, and he was getting better and better at grasping the timing of its execution. Before the 4 Goguryons could react, their aura suddenly froze, as though they had been bound by a layer of iron, and their fighting prowess fell by a notch. At this moment, 800 meters behind them, a figure suddenly moved. Boom! A ferocious gale burst forth like a bolt of lightning, splitting the world and splitting the world apart. Hong Long, a silhouette flashed in midair, and a thick arrow pierced through the air, piercing through the chest of a Goguryeon. The immense force of the arrow pushed him more than a dozen zhang away, pinning him firmly to the ground. Not only so, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th arrows also pierced through the bodies of the other 2 true martial realm Goguryeon experts, sending them flying. Even the powerful torrent of stellar energy of true martial realm experts couldn't withstand it for even a second. With just a single touch, the stellar energy shattered. SSS. Putting aside Myasame Ayaka, even Wang Chong was shocked speechless. He knew that the King of Song had sent an expert to deal with him, but this was the first time he realized that the other party's archery had reached such a formidable level. With 4 people and 4 arrows, Wang Chong didn't even have to lift a finger. Gongzi, that person is powerful. Myasame Ayaka muttered with deep fear in her eyes. She had come into contact with that reticent master archer several times, but she didn't know that he was actually so fearsome. That speed and strength left her goosebumps all over, and her hair stood on end. Too fast. It was really too fast. It was so fast that there was no time to dodge at all. The moment the arrow sounded, it would be the sound of death. Myasame Ayaka was also a speed-type assassin, but that archery was created for the sake of death. Even she wouldn't be able to dodge it. Being aimed at meant death. Don't worry. Seeing how Myasame Ayaka was behaving like a mouse before a cat, Wang Chong patted her shoulder and chuckled. Myasame Ayaka was an assassin, so it was only natural for her to react to such an expert. However, Wang Chong was different. He's an expert on our side. With such a powerful expert here, what are you worried about? If there's anything to worry about, it's the enemy who needs to worry. This was the first time that Wang Chong had used the power of the sharpshooter. Wang Chong was very satisfied with the expert that the King of Song had sent to him. This expert sent by the King of Song has been with me for a long time, but I've never used him. He must have been holding back his anger, so this time, he deliberately showed off his archery skills in front of me. Wang Chong laughed in his heart and did not mind. That person had a very good grasp of the situation. All 4 of them were heavily injured and on the verge of death, which made it convenient for him to use the little yin-yang art. Chi. The saber and sword entered Xiao Chen's body, piercing deep into his heart. A vast essence current surged into his body like the roar of a flood dragon. The nature of the energy harnessed within a true martial realm expert was much higher. Taking in this surge of origin energy, Wang Chong felt his blood boiling, and he felt as though he was going to roar out loud. Hong Long. Wang Chong had already absorbed a huge amount of origin energy over the past few days, and now that he had absorbed the origin energy of the Goguryeo expert, the origin energy in his body flowed at a speed that was several times faster than before. At the same time, the little yin-yang art in his body jolted, and it was at this moment that it broke through the first and second realms, forming an even greater cycle. This Gongzi is about to reach origin energy tier 9. Mayasame Ayaka's eyelids twitched as she stared at Wang Chang's back. She was extremely sensitive to the changes in Wang Chang's aura. The aura emanating from Wang Chang's body was bubbling, as though a boiling volcano. Furthermore, it was getting denser and denser with each passing step. This was a sign that he was about to release his origin energy and form the embryonic form of stellar energy. It hasn't been too long since Gongzi reached origin energy tier 8, and yet, he's already on the verge of reaching origin energy tier 9. This is inconceivable. Mayasame Ayaka's eyebrows twitched. She wasn't someone who lacked knowledge and experience. However, what was happening to Wang Chong was something that she had never seen or heard of before. What Wang Chong was doing had already surpassed the limits of her understanding. Just a little more. After dealing with the first Goguryeo expert, Wang Chong soon walked up to the second one. He could already feel that there was an invisible barrier in front of him, and he would soon break through this barrier. Chi! The little yin-yang sword pierced into the body of the second Goguryeo expert, and Hong Long. As if reaching some sort of trigger, as the surge of origin energy gushed into Wang Chang's body, his body seemed to have turned into an invisible furnace. When the pressure reached its limit, it suddenly burst forth. Boom boom boom. Wang Chang's Laoxin acupoint, Yongquan acupoint, Jianjing acupoint, Mingmen acupoint, Fengqi acupoint. A total of 16 Xianmen acupoints were opened one after another. As soon as these 16 acupoints were opened, a blood-red mist immediately gushed out, shrouding Wang Chong within it. In that instant, Wang Chong felt as if his body weight had been reduced significantly, and he had become much lighter than before. His speed, strength, and dexterity seemed to have been reborn in an instant, increasing by twofold in an instant. The current Wang Chong was at least twofold stronger than before. External release of inner energy. I've really reached the level of external projection. Sensing the changes in his body, Wang Chong felt the 108,000 pores on his body opening up in delight. Raising one's origin energy from tier 8 to tier 9 was a qualitative change. Upon reaching this realm, one's flesh, blood, bones, and meridians would undergo a massive growth. This was the first qualitative change in a martial artist's body, and it was known as minor qualitative change. During this process, one's strength would rise by twofold to twofold. To a martial artist, this minor qualitative change was an extremely important opportunity. In his previous life, Wang Chong had experienced this surge in strength, but this was the first time he was experiencing it. Furthermore, the growth was even greater than in his previous life. Upon reaching origin energy tier 9, one could already be considered as an origin energy expert. Among ordinary martial artists, one could be considered as one of the top existences. Wang Chong closed his eyes. A moment later, he opened them once more, and a brilliant radiance shot out from them. At this moment, Wang Chong raised his palm, and before Mayasame Ayaka's astonished gaze, a snow-white light burst forth and struck a tree 100 meters away. Hong Long, the tree trunk exploded, and the leaves scattered. Amidst a cloud of dust and wood shavings, the 10-meter-tall tree fell to the ground. This is. Looking at the fallen tree, a thought flashed across Mayasame Ayaka's mind. She vaguely recalled something, but she couldn't believe it. 100 steps divine fist. 800 meters away, that mysterious man, who was like a towering mountain hidden in the darkness, slowly put down his bow and arrow. As he gazed at Wang Chong's back, a hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. To be able to exert origin energy with a single punch and strike a distance of 100 steps away, this was something only the 100 steps divine fist was capable of. Even though it couldn't be compared to a true martial realm secret art, it was definitely a legendary secret art in the origin energy realm. Even the master archer had only heard of it. He had never seen anyone cultivate it before. Those who knew this secret art were as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns. For Wang Chong to be able to execute a legendary secret art like the 100 Steps Divine Fist, despite having just reached Origin Energy Tier 9 just a moment ago, it was truly shocking. Where did this child learn so many secret arts at such a young age? In the darkness, the master archer narrowed his eyes. For the first time, he was curious about the young man whom the King of Song had chosen. At least I'm not rusty with it. From afar, Wang Chong stared at his masterpiece and slowly retracted his fist. Nodding his head in satisfaction, he was satisfied with the effect of the punch. The 100 Steps Divine Fist was a legendary secret art, and only a handful of people knew of it. Furthermore, most of them valued it highly, so there were even fewer people who knew it. However, to Wang Chong, this legendary secret art meant nothing at all. After all, it just so happened that he knew this secret art. The 100 Steps Divine Fist sounded mysterious, but in truth, it was just a unique technique to utilize one's origin energy after one had reached Origin Energy Tier 9. The process of gathering one's origin energy was extremely complicated, and it required a lot of skill. Only when one's origin energy was gathered and compressed to a certain level could one release it, and at that point, one would be able to unleash immense destructive power. This was a technique that didn't increase one's cultivation. Thus, it wasn't too difficult for one to grasp the technique. The only problem was that this technique was extremely taxing on one's origin energy. Even an origin energy pinnacle expert would only be able to execute more than a few of the 100 Steps Divine Fist. Thus, unless it was absolutely necessary, one wouldn't use it easily. Practice makes perfect. I'll have to practice this technique more in the future. Wang Chong said to himself as he analyzed the usage of the 100-pacer God Arrow. This secret art allowed one to glide over a long distance, and 100 steps was still relatively easy for one to dodge. Thus, it wasn't that easy to hone one's technique. However, the might of the 100 Steps Divine Fist was truly astounding. Having just achieved a breakthrough to Origin Energy Tier 9, Wang Chong's body was still a little weak. This was a sign that his origin energy was lacking. Following which, without any hesitation, Wang Chong killed the remaining 2 true martial realm Goguryeo warriors. With the nourishment of their origin energy, Wang Chong's strength soared, and his cultivation immediately stabilized. Let's go. After finding 4 superior Goguryeo ginsengs from the corpses of the 4, Wang Chong gestured for his men to leave. The men monitoring the Goguryeo second base sent over a signal that the Goguryons had made a move. The expert sent by the King of Song was simply too powerful. This was also the reason why Wang Chong didn't use him easily. Shwa shwa shwa. In just a short moment, Wang Chong and the others swiftly left. Even the battlefield was cleaned up. All traces of the battle were swept clean. Even the tree that Wang Chong had broken was moved away. Chapter 246. Buns, freshly made buns. Fresh and delicious, I guarantee that you'll be satisfied. Early in the morning, the capital's Jade Dragon Street was filled with people walking to and fro. Crowds of people walked in and out of restaurants, tea shops, and bun stalls. On the east side of Jade Dragon Street, amidst the steam from the buns, the signboard of a restaurant could be vaguely seen. Royal Jade Restaurant. The 3 words were painted in gold on a black background, and it looked rather elegant. The signboard had been changed this morning, and the owner of the restaurant had changed along with the signboard. But other than the owner of the restaurant, the waiters and chefs had all remained the same. Thus, most people were unaware that the owner of the restaurant had changed. Even if some people noticed the change in the signboard, they didn't think too much of it. And at this very moment, Wang Chong was in this very same Royal Jade Restaurant. In the best private room on the second floor of the Royal Jade Restaurant, several burly men from the Zhuang clan and Qi clan were seated on the floor, wolfing down their food. There were already dozens of steamers on the floor, but there were even more steamers stacked on top of each other on the table. The cavalry of the Zhuang clan and the steel guards of the Qi clan were famous, but this was the first time anyone had witnessed their frightening appetite. It's about time. Leaning against the railing, Wang Chong slowly ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. It had been a few days since the last operation, and Wang Chong hadn't done anything in the past few days. All he did was cultivate in this very Royal Jade Restaurant. Dong dong dong. A series of knocks sounded from outside. Come in. Wang Chong said calmly without turning his head. The door to the private room was pushed open, and the black-robed Myasame Ayaka walked in with a steamer of steaming buns. Gongzi. Myasame Ayaka knelt down and placed the steamer in front of Wang Chong. Then, she took out a pair of chopsticks and carefully wiped them clean before handing them over. How is it? Wang Chong took the black jade chopsticks and placed a soup bun into his mouth. The soup dumplings were very soft and very thin. With a light bite, a thick broth seeped into the mouth. It was fresh and fragrant, overflowing from the lips and teeth. After swallowing it, from the mouth to the stomach, there was a comfortable feeling. Not bad. Wang Chong nodded in satisfaction. After eating in so many restaurants and tea houses, Wang Chong still felt that the soup dumplings here were the best. There was an important reason why Wang Chong had chosen this restaurant out of all the restaurants in the capital. As for the other reason, this was also because Wang Chong really needed a restaurant of his own. It was too ostentatious and inconvenient to visit other people's restaurants and shops in the capital. As time passed, it would inevitably attract the attention of others. If he had his own restaurant, it would be very convenient for him to eat or cultivate. At the very least, it would be very convenient in terms of deceiving others. This was similar to how the Yao clan bought the vast crane pavilion. The latter had always left a deep impression on Wang Chong. Sometimes, buying a restaurant of one's own couldn't be measured by money alone. Gongzi, our actions have already caught the attention of the Gogurians. At this moment, not only the first base of the Gogurians, but even the second and third bases are also on high alert. It seems like the Gogurians are starting to get suspicious of us. Kneeling on the floor, Myasame Ayaka reported respectfully. Even when she had no choice but to appear beside Wang Chong, she made sure to make use of the lighting in the room, barriers, screens, and railings to conceal herself so as to not draw the attention of others. This was almost an instinct of an assassin. The Gogurians aren't lacking in experts. At the very least, that King Sojurim isn't someone easy to deal with. After killing so many people, even if others don't suspect us, he will. Wang Chong said impassively as he picked up another soup dumpling and placed it into his mouth. His expression was calm and relaxed, as though everything was going according to his plan. However, won't there be a problem with this? King Sojurim isn't a benevolent person. He even dared to assault the 3 great training camps. If we were to attract his attention, it might be disadvantageous to us. Myasame Ayaka said worriedly with a frown. In the territory of the Tang dynasty, King Sojurim was a legend. His schemes were meticulous, and he was vicious and daring. Yet, no one knew what he looked like. This meant that even if he were to pass by you, you wouldn't be able to tell what he looked like. You wouldn't even know when he killed you. Don't make him sound so terrifying. In the end, he's just a human. It's just that we haven't seen what he looks like before, that's why we're so suspicious of him. Wang Chong swallowed the soup dumpling and waved his hands nonchalantly. Mystery came from the unknown, and the same went for fear. Wang Chong knew that King Sojurim was well versed in this matter. However, this also showed that he was fearful of him. Just like how assassins couldn't be seen in public, King Sojurim was the same as well. If they knew what King Sojurim looked like, they wouldn't be so fearful of him. Furthermore, have you forgotten about the warriors he brought over from Goguryeo? He has spent so much time and effort on them, and he must be up to something. At this moment, he doesn't have the time to bother with us pawns. Wang Chong paused for a moment before continuing. Besides, this might actually be a good thing. We might be able to alarm him and force him to hurry up. The reason why Wang Chong didn't make a move for the past few days was so that the Goguryans wouldn't be able to figure out his movements. This way, they wouldn't be able to fathom his movements and feel uneasy. As long as they felt uneasy, they would surely find a way to hasten their movements. As the saying went, mistakes are made in the midst of a rush. Once one's movements were rushed, it would be easy for one to leave behind a flaw. Mayasame Ayaka frowned and fell into deep thought. She seemed to be contemplating the meaning behind Wang Chong's words. Wang Chong chuckled and ignored her. Picking up a soup bun with his chopsticks, he stuffed it into his mouth. He didn't feel anything after cultivating for an entire night. But now that he was done cultivating, he felt a surge of hunger in his stomach. While eating the soup bun, Wang Chong continued his cultivation of the Art of Life Massacre. In the past 3 days, Wang Chong didn't do anything else but study the Art of Life Massacre. At the start, this secret art was as thin as a spider's thread. When Wang Chong left the mountain, he had only cultivated it to the thickness of a finger. But now, thanks to the abundant origin energy he had absorbed, Wang Chong's sword Chi of Life Massacre had grown to the width of 4 fingers. His movements were majestic, reminiscent of a rainbow. Furthermore, thanks to his origin energy tier 9 ability to expel his inner chi, Wang Chong was able to execute sword Chi of Life Massacre without using a sword, and its might wouldn't be reduced in the slightest. I can be considered a swordsman now. Wang Chong thought as he took a bite of the soup bun. In his previous life, Wang Chong used a spear, and this was the first time he was becoming a swordsman. Even though he was only a basic swordsman, he was already a swordsman. Furthermore, he had stepped onto a completely different path from his previous life. Elder Su's swordsmanship is known as the #1 in the world. Even though it's only the first layer of sword chi, it's already sufficient to break through the stellar energy of a true martial realm expert. However, this isn't sufficient. The first layer of Art of Life Massacre has a total of 9 revolutions, and the expansion and contraction of sword chi form 1 revolution. Only after reaching the 9th revolution can it be considered as the true sword chi of Life Massacre. I haven't even reached the first revolution yet, so I have to continue working hard. Tilting his head upward, Wang Chong subconsciously knocked on the table with his left hand as thoughts flashed through his mind. The Art of Life Massacre's sword chi started off as thin as a gossamer. As one's strength grew, the sword chi would continuously grow thicker and its power would also increase. When it reached the point of withering, it would begin to shrink, compressing the sword chi. When the sword chi turned from thick to thin, becoming the size of a spider's web again, it would be called the first revolution. After that, it would be the second revolution, the third revolution. The power of the sword chi was directly proportional to the number of revolutions. The higher the revolutions, the more powerful it would be. And after reaching the 9th revolution, it would be almost invincible, and nothing would be able to stop it. Even if one didn't have a sword in hand, it wouldn't make any difference to the 9th revolution sword chi of Life Massacre. However, the higher the revolutions, the harder it would be to cultivate. Furthermore, as the revolutions increased, the color of the sword chi would also change. This was all slowly figured out by Wang Chong as he tried to figure out the mental cultivation method of the Sword of Life Massacre. Currently, Wang Chong was still at the stage of the half-revolution. However, even this half-revolution sword chi was able to pierce through metal and crack jade. It was enough to pose a fatal threat to a true martial realm expert. And this was the power of So Young-sun's swordsmanship. Let's go back home and rest for a while. There are some matters that need to be settled. After finishing a steamer of soup dumplings, Wang Chong flicked his sleeves, pushed the table away and stood up. It had been more than half a month since he left the Kunwu training camp. It was time to settle the woozy steel weapons that he had accumulated at Tuoba Gueyuan's place. Money flowed like water. No matter how much money he had, it would never be enough. Wang Chong was well aware that there would be more areas where he would need to spend money in the future. Currently, the woozy steel weapons were his only source of income. Hey! Do you know how to walk? Are you blind? Just as he was about to leave, a commotion could be heard from the streets outside. Wang Chong turned his head and saw a fat merchant and several burly mercenary experts pointing at a disheveled expert of around 40 years of age, his face red as he cursed at him. How dare you do this to me? Wang Chong turned his head and saw a fat merchant with several burly mercenaries pointing at a disheveled expert in his 40s. Although the person being scolded looked disheveled, Wang Chong could tell that this person was an expert with just a glance. When he walked, his feet were especially steady. His shoulders did not even sway. Furthermore, it was a completely subconscious action and not intentional. This was a habit that only those who had reached a certain level of martial arts cultivation would form. Martial arts emphasized precision and 100% accuracy. For example, Wang Chong's sword chi had to accurately hit a spider silk that was 10 feet away. As a martial arts expert, one's hands could not shake. When one's cultivation reached a certain level, this would become an instinct. This was not an issue of stability. It was just that those who had cultivated to such a level would have their limbs and body especially stable. They would be like a tree stump that was growing there, completely different from the stability of an ordinary person. The difference between the two was like heaven and earth. It was easy to discern a person with a single glance. He's just asking for trouble. Wang Chong smiled and shook his head, not intending to. The capital was massive, and such conflicts occurred every day. That disheveled middle-aged man was clearly more formidable than the mercenaries of the merchant. The merchant had truly kicked a steel plate. If everything went as expected, this fellow would probably be ruthlessly beaten up. Wang Chong didn't care, nor did he have any intention of interfering. Instead, he began to walk away. However, he had only taken a few steps when something unexpected happened. Beat him up. Beat him up. What the hell? You didn't even apologize for knocking me over. There's no need to hold back. Beat him up. If he dies, I'll take responsibility. And I thought that you were formidable, so arrogant and domineering. But it turns out that you're just a weakling. Pa, trash, the merchant's vicious voice echoed from the street. This time, not only Wang Chong, even Mayasame Ayaka was surprised. The duo turned their heads to look outside. On the wide street, the disheveled middle-aged man whom they thought to be an expert was being pummeled to the ground. Several guards of the merchant had surrounded him, and they were raining punches and kicks on him. On the other hand, the disheveled middle-aged man was just like an ordinary person, unable to put up the slightest resistance. Chapter 247. Given that man's strength, the guards of the merchant weren't a match for him at all. Under normal circumstances, that plump fellow was simply asking for trouble. But the outcome was completely the opposite of what Wang Chong had expected. Interesting. For the first time, Wang Chong's curiosity was piqued. That man clearly didn't intend to retaliate, and under such circumstances, it wasn't in Wang Chong's place to interfere. Thus, he chose to watch by the side. How unlucky. Let's go. There's no need to bother with him. After venting his anger, the plump merchant stormed off with a string of curses. Right after he left, the disheveled middle-aged man slowly crawled up from the ground. Despite suffering such a vicious beating, his body was still shockingly stable. His legs and shoulders didn't move at all, as if nothing had happened at all. What a formidable cultivator. Before Wang Chong could react, Mayasame Ayaka, who was leaning against the railing by the side, narrowed her eyes in astonishment. The guards of the plump merchant weren't weak, and they had used their full strength when they struck. Even Mayasame Ayaka wouldn't have been able to withstand such a vicious beating without retaliating. Yet, this man didn't seem to be injured at all. An expert. Wang Chang's eyebrows shot up in surprise. This man's strength seemed to be far greater than he had expected. The streets were bustling with activity, and the commotion from a moment ago was like a bubble on the surface of the sea, swiftly disappearing without a trace. Other than Wang Chong, Mayasame Ayaka, and the experts of the Zhuang clan and Qi clan, no one paid much attention to the crowd. That man didn't seem to notice Wang Chong and the others either. He slowly stood up, and in that instant, Wang Chong finally caught sight of a dazed face. It's him. Wang Chong's eyelids twitched as a name flashed across his mind. Wang Chong didn't expect to see that man here. Gongzi, you know him. Mayasame Ayaka walked over from the side, her exposed eyes still staring at the back of that man, watching as he slowly disappeared into the crowd in a daze. Yes. Wang Chong nodded. There was a strange look in his eyes. Come with me. Who knows, maybe we can even find a powerful helper this time. As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Chong quickly changed his mind. After leaving Royal Jade Pavilion, Wang Chong didn't return to the Wang clan. Instead, he turned and walked in the direction the man had left. Ministry of Personnel. He's an official from the Ministry of Personnel. However, this should be a branch office of the Ministry of Personnel. These were the residences of minor officials who were copying documents from the Ministry of Appointments. With his ability, isn't this a bit of a waste of talent? Mayasame Ayaka glanced at the unassuming yaman before her, and the doubt in her eyes deepened. Even though Mayasame Ayaka had only been in the Central Plains for a short period of time, she had lived under the sun of heaven's feet for quite some time. The royal court of the Tang dynasty was divided into 6 departments: rights, officials, works, military, punishment, and agriculture. Other than these 6 departments, there were dozens of smaller yamans of varying sizes in the capital, and they dealt with different problems based on their different functions. Judging from the shabby appearance of the yaman before him, it was likely to be one of the most inconspicuous yamans in the Ministry of Personnel. Throughout the year, it was rare to see any influential figures here. Most of the time, they had to deal with documents, and it was one of the most insignificant officials in the Ministry of Personnel. The requirements for such work weren't high, and ordinary people would suffice. Given that person's strength, it was truly a waste for him to take on such an insignificant job. Wang Chong didn't say a word. Instead, he stared at the dusty plaque above the door. If Wang Chong's initial guess was only a guess, at this moment, Wang Chong was certain of that person's identity. Li Man, the few of you wait outside. I'll go in for a moment. After saying these words to the experts of the Zhuang clan and Qi clan, Wang Chong quickly walked into the yamen. There were strict rules in the government, and even a small yamen like this wasn't a place that ordinary people could enter. Wang Chong flashed the token given to him by the King of Song, and he walked in unimpeded. What are you doing here? Why are you only here at this hour? Do you think that you're still in the Ministry of Punishments? Do you think that you're still that young genius? Trash. Back then, you couldn't even catch the culprits who assassinated the officials of the royal court, and now, you're dragging others down just to copy some documents. What else can you do? You're completely useless. Let me tell you, if you don't finish copying these documents today, don't even think about going back. All you think about is eating and waiting for death. That while he was still in the courtyard, before he could step into the main hall, Wang Chong heard a coarse voice cursing loudly. The words were so harsh that even Wang Chong couldn't stand it anymore. Enough. Don't say any more. Wang Chong frowned and stepped into the literature study of the yamen. As far as the eye could see, a dozen or so civil servants were copying documents inside, and the documents on the table were piled up like a mountain. Diagonally across from the door, a civil servant who looked like a minor leader of the yamen was pointing at the middle-aged man Wang Chong had seen in Royal Jade Restaurant, and he was cursing loudly. The disheveled middle-aged man lowered his head and didn't talk back. Thinking of this man's reputation more than a decade ago, Wang Chong couldn't help but feel a deep sense of sympathy. Who would have thought that this man would end up in such a state 10 years ago? Who are you? The leader of the civil servants was furious. When he saw Wang Chong, who he didn't know, walk in, he immediately flew into a rage. Don't you know that important officials of the royal court strictly forbid outsiders from entering? Besides, what does it have to do with you that I'm teaching a lesson to someone from the yamen? Swish, swish, swish. Everyone else in the hall looked over as well. There were usually only 20 or 30 people in the yamen, and they were all familiar faces. People like Wang Chong would stand out the moment he entered, so it was hard not to notice him. Wang Chong couldn't be bothered to say anything more. He directly took out a shiny golden token. Seeing this golden waist token, the scholar leader's expression changed in an instant. This was just an inconspicuous yamen under the Ministry of Personnel, and his rank was very low. But he had more or less heard of and seen the various sects under the emperor's jurisdiction. The token in Wang Chong's hand was clearly a prince token. Furthermore, from the word Song on it, it was the token of the king of Song, Li Qingqi, who was famous in the imperial court of the Tang dynasty and had an extraordinary status. Although they were under the emperor's jurisdiction, they had stayed in this insignificant yamen. It was rare for them to see an influential official in the imperial court, much less a prince. Young master, you work for His Highness the King of Song. The civil servant walked around the table and the documents. His expression instantly changed. He bowed, cupped his hands, and was extremely enthusiastic. I didn't know you were coming, young master. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you. Does His Highness the King of Song have any orders for me? You don't have to worry about that. I'm here for him. As Wang Chong spoke, he suddenly pointed a finger at the disheveled middle-aged man behind the documents. This greatly surprised everyone. The disheveled middle-aged man lowered his head. He didn't dare to be hit or scolded. He just accepted it and didn't resist at all. But when he heard a strange young man coming to look for him, he couldn't help but raise his head. For the first time, a surprised look appeared in his eyes. Him. The civil servant leader was surprised. He didn't expect that Wang Chong would come to look for the most insignificant, looked down upon, and had the least presence in the yamen. Young master, are you sure it's him? How could it be? Are you the one who knows who I'm looking for instead of me? Wang Chong said coldly. This. Young master, please don't misunderstand. That's not what I mean. The civil servant hurriedly waved his hands awkwardly. Even though he was perplexed, his reaction wasn't slow. Regardless of what Wang Chong was looking for or who he was looking for, it had nothing to do with him. On the other hand, His Highness the King of Song was of noble standing. The disparity between the two of them was like the difference between clouds and mud, and he wasn't someone whom mere civil servants like them could afford to offend. All right. Let's rest for today. Everyone, hurry up and leave. Ma Yinlong, I'll leave this gongzi to you. Treat him well, and if anything were to happen, I'll hold you accountable. The civil servant leader knew that he had shouted too loudly earlier, and this gongzi probably didn't like him. Thus, he hurriedly led everyone out of the room, leaving only Wang Chong and Ma Yinlong behind. It's really him. The doubts in Wang Chong's mind cleared up. If Wang Chong had not seen it with his own eyes, he would have found it very difficult to believe that the two of them were the same person. That genius of the Bureau of Punishments who had received the limelight from 10-some years ago, and this middle-aged man who would not retaliate when hit or scolded. The Goguryeo assassination back then didn't just kill a single person. Who are you? I don't think that I know you. Now that only he and the unfamiliar young man were left in the room, Ma Yinlong finally lifted his head and stared at Wang Chong coldly. His attitude was completely different from when he was with the civil servant leader and the plump merchant by the street. Ever since that incident a decade ago, he didn't want to have anything to do with those influential figures. Hee, you don't know me. But I do. Wang Chong chuckled and revealed his intentions. I'm here to ask for your help. I need your help to capture someone. I think you're looking for the wrong person. I'm just a civil servant who transcribes documents. If you want my help to capture someone, you should head to the Bureau of Punishments, Bureau of Military Personnel, or somewhere else. I'm afraid that I won't be able to help you much, so I'll have to ask you to leave. Ma Yinlong sneered coldly without a pleasant expression on his face. Hee, don't be in such a hurry to reject me. It won't be too late for you to wait for me to finish my words. Our operation this time has something to do with the Gogurians. Wang Chong said. Ma Yinlong's eyebrows twitched, as though he was noticing Wang Chong for the first time. But very quickly, this trace of expression flashed by, as if nothing had happened. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not interested in the Gogurians. The door is right there, so you should leave. Ma Yinlong grabbed a bag of documents, lowered his head, and began to transcribe them, clearly intending to send Wang Chong off. Hee, even King Sojurim isn't interested. Wang Chong chuckled. Hong Long. As soon as Wang Chong said those words, Ma Yinlong's face immediately warped in shock. Gotcha, the brush in his hand snapped into two. Hong Long. At the same time, the air in the room suddenly changed. As though a raging storm, a powerful and fearsome aura burst forth from Ma Yinlong's body. This aura was so powerful that even Wang Chong, who had advanced his cultivation to Origin Energy Tier 9, paled in comparison to it, as if he was an insignificant speck of dust. In that instant, Wang Chong felt as though he was standing in the most violent ocean in the world, and 1,000-chi-tall wave was crashing down on him, threatening to crush him into smithereens. To think that this fellow is already so fearsome. Feeling the immense pressure weighing down on him, Wang Chong's face warped in astonishment. More than a decade had passed, but not only did this person's cultivation not deteriorate, he had even grown stronger than what the rumors said. Even the Gogurian true martial realm experts whom he had met before seemed as insignificant as ants before him. Chapter 248. Fong of the White Tiger. A name flashed across Wang Chong's mind. More than a decade ago, Ma Yinlong would have been the most promising genius in the Bureau of Punishments. Back then, he was known as the most outstanding genius of the younger generation in the Bureau of Military Personnel. Although he had lived a destitute life for more than 10 years and had been banished to the government office of the Ministry of Personnel to become a lowly scribe that no one looked up to, he had never given up on his strength. Profound martial realm. A thought flashed across Wang Chong's mind. Ma Yinlong's cultivation had already surpassed the true martial realm, reaching profound martial realm at the very least. Gongzi, be careful. Just as Ma Yinlong was deep in thought, a feminine voice suddenly sounded. As though sensing Ma Yinlong's danger, a black shadow flashed, and a petite figure leaped down from the roof, heading straight for him. This is bad. Wang Chong was astonished. Even though Ma Yinlong's aura was threatening, there wasn't much killing intent emanating from him. This was something Wang Chong was well aware of, but Mayasame Ayaka was clearly unaware of. As soon as Wang Chong entered the yamen, Mayasame Ayaka leaped onto the roof. The moment Ma Yinlong made a move, Mayasame Ayaka instinctively thought that he was going to attack Wang Chong, so she immediately retaliated. Stop! Wang Chong was astonished. He knew that Mayasame Ayaka wasn't a match for the Fong of the White Tiger of the Bureau of Punishments. However, Mayasame Ayaka's movements were simply too swift, and she had already prepared herself for it. Even Wang Chong wasn't able to stop her in time. Clang! In a flash of light, Mayasame Ayaka was already above Ma Yinlong's head. Her 3-chi long sword gleamed coldly as it slashed down toward Ma Yinlong's head. Humph! Seated behind his desk, a cold glint flashed across Ma Yinlong's eyes as he stared at the descending Mayasame Ayaka. In the next instant, boom! The world trembled, and a surge of black stellar energy gushed out from Ma Yinlong's body. The black stellar energy caused the air to tremble, and the sound of metal clashing echoed. Pang! As though a gust of autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves, Zhang Xian's stellar energy struck Mayasame Ayaka in midair. Mayasame Ayaka didn't even have the time to dodge. The origin energy around her dissipated, and she was sent flying like a broken kite. Mr. Ma, stop! Panicked, Wang Chong leaped forward to catch the falling Mayasame Ringong. At the same time, he hurriedly called out to stop Ma Yinlong. Who in the world are you people? Who told you to come here? I haven't interfered with the affairs of the Ministry of Justice for more than 10 years. It has been more than a decade since I interfered. Who told you I was here? Ma Yinlong raised his head from behind the table, and in a stark contrast to his previous dejected expression, Ma Yinlong's eyes were gleaming with sharpness. Like a ferocious white tiger, he seemed to be able to peer into the depths of one's soul. Anyone who faced such a gaze would subconsciously avoid it, as though a needle had been pricked by it. The atmosphere was tense, and Wang Chong could sense the killing intent in Ma Yinlong's heart. If he didn't give the other party a satisfactory answer, this Fang of the White Tiger of the Bureau of Punishments would probably turn his back on him. Mayasame Ayaka, how are you? Are you injured? Ignoring Ma Yinlong, Wang Chong hugged Mayasame Ayaka's body tightly as he asked worriedly. I'm fine. The black veil covering Mayasame Ayaka's face had already been torn apart, revealing her pale face. Her origin energy seemed to have dissipated, leaving her in a weakened state. But her cheeks were red as if they were on fire, tinged with shyness. When she saw Wang Chong's gaze, she subconsciously averted her eyes. Wang Chong was taken aback for a moment before realizing that the both of them were in an intimate position. This was the first time they had been in such an intimate position ever since they met. Feeling a little awkward, Wang Chong hurriedly put Mayasame Ayaka down and subconsciously turned his head away, not saying a single word. I won't go easy on you all the time. If you can't give me a satisfactory answer, I won't let you off so lightly the next time. Ma Yinlong's cold voice sounded in Wang Chong's ears, and only then did he recover from his daze. Mr. Ma, I've already said it. I'm here for King Sojurim. Elder might be hiding well, but you should know that given our standing, it isn't too difficult for us to find out where he is. Wang Chong said with a hint of arrogance in his voice. As a scion of a prestigious clan, it wasn't too difficult for them to investigate a person. Regardless of where Ma Yinlong was hiding, as long as he was in the vicinity of the capital, Wang Chong would surely be able to find him. This was the confidence of the nobles. Ma Yinlong was taken aback for a moment before his complexion finally softened. Elder, Goguryeo has always been a threat to the empire, and I believe that you know this better than anyone else. King Sojurim is the head of Goguryeo's spies in the Tang dynasty, and you were one of the people in charge of pursuing King Sojurim back then. You've studied him for more than a decade now, and I believe that you know him better than anyone else. Thus, I hope that you can help me capture King Sojurim. Wang Chong said grimly. In truth, Wang Chong had already made up his mind on how to deal with the Goguryans. With the help of the King of Song and the army of the royal court, dealing with the Goguryans would be a walk in the park. However, as the saying went, weeds will grow again if the roots aren't removed. To the massive empire of Goguryeo, the deaths of a bunch of Goguryan warriors meant nothing. As long as they were willing, they could send a steady stream of soldiers over. They could continue to carry out assassinations and sabotage. If Wang Chong wanted to deal a heavy blow to the Goguryans, he had to find the head of the Goguryan assassins in the Central Plains, King Sojurim. Only by killing the head of the Goguryan spy would he be able to stop the Goguryans from assassinating the important officials of the Tang dynasty. At the very least, without this person, the influence of the Goguryan Empire in the Tang dynasty would be greatly weakened. However, King Sojurim was as cunning as a fox. Even though Wang Chong was confident that he could eliminate the experts he had mobilized from the Goguryeo Empire, he wasn't confident that he could capture him. This was also the reason why Wang Chong came to look for Ma Yinlong. More than a decade ago, when King Sojurim assassinated the important officials of the royal court, as the youngest genius in the Bureau of Punishments, Ma Yinlong was one of the people in charge of this case. He pursued King Sojurim for more than a decade, and in the end, he was stripped of his scholarly title by the Bureau of Punishments due to this case. He was banished to the Bureau of Personnel and became a lowly scribe. But in terms of understanding of King Sojurim, Wang Chong knew that no one could surpass him. This wasn't just because of his understanding of King Sojurim. More importantly, back then, among the important officials of the royal court that King Sojurim assassinated was Ma Yinlong's teacher and the woman he loved the most. More than a decade ago, Ma Yinlong wasn't as old as he was now. He was still in his 20s, enjoying the glory of his youth. On the other hand, his teacher, Lord Zhang Shoshan of the Bureau of Punishments, had a young and beautiful daughter who was betrothed to him. When the Goguryans carried out night assassinations, they would leave no one alive. Among those who died was the beloved daughter of Lord Zhang of the Bureau of Punishments. This matter was extremely secretive, and not many people knew of it back then. However, Wang Chong had heard of it. In terms of hatred for the Goguryans and King Sojurim, there was no one who could match up to the Fang of the White Tiger of the Bureau of Punishments. The reason why King Sojurim remained peaceful for more than a decade and didn't launch any large-scale assassinations or sabotage was largely due to the existence of the Fang of the White Tiger. But it was a pity that despite Ma Yinlong's understanding of King Sojurim, he was still unable to capture the latter in his previous life. And when King Sojurim successfully launched his second assassination attempt, Ma Yinlong was finally remembered once more. Suffering such a blow, Ma Yinlong finally broke down. The last news Wang Chong heard was that not long after King Sojurim successfully escaped back to the Goguryeo Empire, Ma Yinlong moved to the burial ground of his teacher, Zhang Shoshan, and built a straw hut there. But a few years later, he passed away from depression. When Wang Chong heard of this matter back then, he couldn't help but feel regretful. Ma Yinlong was a talented person, and he was a man of steel. Even though he failed to capture King Sojurim, his existence still served as a huge deterrent to the latter. A figure like him deserved a chance to exact vengeance. This was also the reason why Wang Chong changed his mind when he saw the matter at the Royal Jade Pavilion. While he was helping the royal court, at the same time, he was also helping himself. It's useless. You found the wrong person. I can't help you in dealing with King Sojurim. You should look for someone else instead. Unaware of Wang Chong's intentions, Ma Yinlong rejected the other party's request without any hesitation. Ha, Mr. Ma, if I were to say that King Sojurim intends to carry out another assassination attempt and sabotage just like the one from a decade ago, but this time around, he intends to kill even more officials of the royal court, would you still stand by idly? Wang Chong sneered coldly. What did you say? Hearing Wang Chong's words, Ma Yinlong's face warped in shock. He abruptly raised his head and glared at Wang Chong with reddened eyes. Mr. Ma, I'm here to inform you that King Sojurim is going to make another move. Wang Chong said grimly. Boom! There was a flash of light, and before Mayasame Ayaka could see clearly, a figure had already appeared before her. In an instant, Ma Yinlong appeared before the duo with killing intent blazing in his eyes. If the two of you dare to lie to me, I'll make sure that you die without a proper burial ground. Ma Yinlong's face was incomparably dark, and even Mayasame Ayaka felt a chill running down her spine. However, upon seeing this sight, Wang Chong chuckled. His judgment was right. Even though he had been in low spirits for more than a decade, the former head of the Bureau of Punishments had never forgotten about King Sojurim. Mr. Ma, you'll know the truth with a single look. Chapter 249. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong swiftly revealed the entire matter. King Sojurim's movements were secretive, and it wasn't easy to track him down. It was impossible for King Sojurim to be absent from such a huge matter like mobilizing troops to assassinate an important official of the Central Plains. This was their final chance to deal with King Sojurim. Wang Chong believed that given Ma Yinlong's intelligence, it was impossible for him not to understand this point. Thus, Wang Chong patiently stood there with Mayasame Ayaka, awaiting Ma Yinlong's reply. The study room was silent. Ma Yinlong stood there motionlessly with his head lowered. No one could tell what he was thinking about. Since he didn't move, Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka also stood there motionlessly. Even though he was confident in his plan, it was ultimately his own thoughts. No one knew what Ma Yinlong was thinking at this moment. Honestly speaking, Wang Chong wasn't too confident either. After all, Ma Yinlong didn't seem like an easy person to convince. How do you want me to help you? After an unknown period of time, Ma Yinlong finally lifted his head. Hearing those words, a smile finally appeared on Wang Chong's face. In the deep night sky, a crescent moon hung high in the sky of a remote courtyard. Wang Chong noticed that the first base was brightly lit, and Goguryeo warriors were standing guard in the surroundings. There was a restless atmosphere in the air. In just a short period of time, more than a dozen Goguryeo warriors, including a true martial realm expert, had vanished from the face of the earth without a trace. It was hard to tell if they had died or gone somewhere else. Such a situation had never happened before, at least not on such a large scale. As the person in charge of the first base, it wasn't hard to imagine how frustrated Li Jiuhuan was. How is it? Are you still unable to find their whereabouts? Under the dim light, Li Jiuhuan asked with his hands behind his back. Even though he was only in his 30s, his resolute face made him look like an accomplished leader. Lord, there's nothing. Our men have searched the entire capital of the Tang dynasty. They had searched everywhere, but there was no news of them at all. In this subordinate's opinion, the odds are against them. On the ground, a Goguryeo assassin with his hair draped over his shoulders and his face covered with a cloth knelt on the ground. His expression was very pious. The hierarchy in Goguryeo was extremely strict. Outside of the empire, all of the assassins and shadow guards had to obey the orders of the local leader. Are there no movements from the public houses of the Tang dynasty? Is it possible that he had a conflict with the forces of some nobles or dukes of the Tang dynasty? Li Jiuhuan said. When the news came out, his first reaction was to wonder if these fellows had a conflict with some hedonistic son of the House of Duke of the Tang dynasty, and were eliminated by these hedonistic sons using the power of their families. It wasn't as if such a thing had never happened before. In a place like the capital of the Tang dynasty, there were nobles everywhere. If one were to stay in such a place for too long, there was no guarantee that one wouldn't offend one or two scions of nobility. While not all of these scions were like that, there were bound to be some vicious men in every clan who knew that the laws of the Tang dynasty forbade murder. Thus, they didn't hold back at all. Sometimes, even the corpses couldn't be found. It was truly a case of destroying the corpses, leaving not even the slightest trace behind. Putting aside the fact that it was the Bureau of Punishments, even the victims, like them, didn't know who did it. Thus, Li Jiuhuan's first thought was that these assassins might have offended an extremely formidable fellow. They might have been killed outside. The Tang people had never held back when it came to killing Goguryons. That's a possibility. However, the possibility is slim. Too many people have died this time. Other than us, there are casualties in the second and third bases. We have a feeling that someone is targeting us. Of course, there are other reasons as well. The masked assassin knelt on the ground and reported respectfully. The Goguryons had a specialist in the capital of the Tang dynasty in charge of investigating such matters. He was only announcing the results objectively. Frowning, Li Jiuhuan fell silent. More than a dozen Goguryeo experts had died silently in the city. It wouldn't have mattered if it was any other time, but it just had to be at such a crucial moment. Li Jiuhuan wasn't afraid that someone was targeting them, but he was afraid that it would affect the Lord's plan. The only fortunate thing was that all of the missing experts had gone missing in the city. Even if someone was targeting the Gogurians, they shouldn't have discovered the existence of their bases. This was a blessing amidst the misfortune. Of course, this was also thanks to that lord. After all of the bases were built by that lord. Even the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments of the Tang Dynasty couldn't find the existence of their bases. Everyone had unreservedly trusted and respected the person above them. What did the Lord say? Li Jiuhuan suddenly asked. There's no need to bother with the Lord's words for now. Sacrifices are bound to be made in order to achieve great things. At this moment, even if we have to sacrifice all of our bases, we mustn't make any big moves lest we attract the attention of the Tang Dynasty. These are the Lord's words. The masked assassin kneeled on the floor and reported respectfully. I understand. Li Jiuhuan was taken aback, and a dazed expression appeared on his face. But soon, he recovered and said, Please tell the Lord that I know what I should do. More than half of the warriors in the kingdom have arrived, and it won't be long before a major event shakes the Tang Dynasty. Lord, why don't you wait a little longer? Lord Sojurim's foresight is truly incredible. If we can deal a heavy blow to the Tang Dynasty, our warriors will have died a worthy death. Everyone in the Central Plains should be prepared to face death. What do you say, Lord? The masked assassin kneeling on the ground said. Li Jiuhuan didn't say anything and just nodded. Caw! Amidst the silence, a bone-chilling cry suddenly sounded from the sky. In the blink of an eye, a pitch-black raven descended from the sky and flew into the room. Upon seeing the pitch-black raven, the duo in the room immediately revealed a solemn and respectful expression. Goguryeo worshipped the three-legged crow, so they didn't rely on ordinary birds to deliver messages. Instead, they relied on pitch-black ravens. Lord has sent word that he's gathering the experts of the various bases. It seems like the operation is about to begin. You should return to report on the orders. Li Jiuhuan's expression changed, and he waved his hands grimly. Yes. The masked assassin replied. With a flip of his body, he leaped out of the window and disappeared. Pooh! Not too long after the masked assassin left, Li Jiuhuan also blew out the candles, and the room was soon plunged into darkness. So. At the same time, from the southeast corner of the courtyard, a figure flew out, and with a few swoosh swoosh swoosh, he swiftly headed in the direction of the masked assassin. Due to his incredible speed, no one saw this sight. Ah! After an unknown period of time, a figure slowly peeked out from the corner of the room. After waiting for so long, there's finally news of King Sojurim. Wang Chong thought. Glancing at the dimly lit sky, Wang Chong quickly crouched down and made his way out. Under the dim moonlight, one could see that Wang Chong's body was covered in a layer of grass. It was made from a layer of vines and grass. When Wang Chong was crouching on the ground, coupled with the tortoise breathing art, it was nearly impossible to notice him. Wang Chong had applied the disguise art from the other world to this world, and it seemed to be rather effective. As Wang Chong made his way out of the courtyard, Mayasame Ayaka quickly walked up to him. Gongzi, how is it? Mayasame Ayaka asked. The Goguryeo base wasn't as easy to infiltrate as it seemed on the surface. Mayasame Ayaka was an assassin as well, but she didn't dare to approach the window of the Goguryeo residence. This time, it was Wang Chong and Ma Yinlong who went together. Ma Yinlong has already gone after them. Wang Chong said. This was the first time he was working together with the wolf of the white tiger. Ma Yinlong was a profound martial realm expert, and it wasn't a problem for him to track down a Goguryeo assassin. Thus, Wang Chong wasn't worried at all. Ma Yinlong left swiftly and returned swiftly as well. In just a few moments, he appeared before the group once more. Come over, I'll show you something. After saying those words, Ma Yinlong turned around and left. A moment later, Wang Chong, Mayasame Ayaka, and the Zhuang clan and Qi clan cavalrymen and guards finally saw what Ma Yinlong wanted them to see. This is. Those fellows actually broke through the walls of the capital. The group of people looked at the hole in front of them, and their expressions turned ugly. Even though Wang Chong wasn't as astounded as the experts of the Zhuang clan and Qi clan, he still couldn't help but frown upon seeing the hole. The capital was the residence of the emperor, and it was the capital of several dynasties. Through the generations of reinforcement, the underground was extremely sturdy. This was especially so for the areas near the palace walls. Beneath the ground were large granite and basalt rocks. These rocks were incomparably dense, and even swords wouldn't be able to cut through them. On the other hand, the walls constructed by the emperor were different from those constructed by ordinary people. Surrounding the walls were boulders several hundred zhang thick, and the area of the walls was massive. On top of that, there would be several imperial army members patrolling the area daily. To open a tunnel here without being discovered by the imperial army was extremely difficult. It would take a lot of time and effort, and it would definitely be a huge undertaking. From a certain perspective, this was an impossible feat, yet the Goguryans actually managed to open up a secret tunnel here, connecting the inside and outside of the capital. In other words, the walls of the Tang dynasty were no longer restricted to them. They could enter and exit the walls at any time, and they could deploy their experts. Mayasame Ayaka might not have felt anything from this, but for Wang Chong, Ma Yinlong, and the cavalrymen and guards of the Zhuang clan and Qi clan, it was a completely different feeling. Yet, there was a tunnel in the hands of outsiders in the capital, allowing them to enter and leave as they pleased. No one from the central plains of the Tang dynasty would feel good about this. Before this, Wang Chong had heard of the reputation of King Sojurim. However, looking at the secret tunnel beneath his feet, Wang Chong finally had a deeper understanding of the legendary spy king of the Goguryans. Chapter 250. Did you find out where he went? Wang Chong lifted his head to look at Ma Yinlong and asked. I didn't chase after him. The forest is lush, making it easy for him to be discovered. Thus, the moment he entered the forest, he retreated. If I'm not mistaken, the place where the Goguryan elites are gathered should be outside the city. Knowing that Wang Chong was referring to the assassin, Ma Yinlong said. Outside the city. Wang Chong's eyebrows twitched. He slowly turned his head around and gazed at the mountain peak beyond the city walls, deep in thought. After looking around, he realized that the largest gathering point of the Goguryans was located outside the city. Although it was a little strange, it made sense when he thought about it. Firstly, they were connected by a secret passageway, allowing them to enter the city even at night. Secondly, even if their tracks were to be exposed, it would be convenient for them to escape. Do you have any thoughts on what to do next? Wang Chong looked at Ma Yinlong. The current Ma Yinlong was completely different from the disheveled middle-aged man he had seen at the Royal Jade Pavilion. His eyes were burning with an intense fighting spirit. Ma Yinlong was the one who had released the assassin. Given Wang Chong's strength, he could have easily captured the assassin and interrogated him to reveal their location. However, Ma Yinlong didn't do so. Wang Chong believed that he had his reasons for doing so. As the person who had the deepest understanding of the Goguryans and King Sojurim, Wang Chong believed that Ma Yinlong could be trusted in this aspect. The Goguryan assassins are all death warriors, and it's impossible to extract any useful information from them. If we were to capture him, we might end up alerting them instead. Ma Yinlong knew what Wang Chong was thinking, and with just a few words, he explained the reason why he released the assassin. As for what happens next. After so many years, it's about time for them to appear. It's about time for this matter to come to an end. At the end of his words, Ma Yinlong sighed deeply, and a complicated look surfaced in his eyes. Ma Yinlong applied for 3 days of leave. During these 3 days, he didn't mention where he would be going, and Wang Chong didn't ask either. From the Fong of the White Tiger, who was favored by the heavens, to the petty scribe of the government office of the Ministry of Personnel, everyone had their own story behind them, and they did not dig into it. However, 3 days later, Wang Chong saw Ma Yinlong's results in the Royal Jade Pavilion. In front of Wang Chong, 3 middle-aged men in shabby clothes stood in a row in front of Wang Chong. Of the 3, one was a seasoned bird trader with an exceptionally large eagle perched on his shoulder. The other was a one-armed drunkard with an empty left sleeve. Even from a distance away, Wang Chong could smell the stench of alcohol on him. There was another one who looked particularly ferocious. It was obvious that he was the kind of mercenary expert who would sacrifice his life for anyone who gave him money. Although the 3 of them looked a little different, they were not as simple as they seemed on the surface. But that was all. There were at least a few thousand of such people in the capital. In the past, Wang Chong wouldn't have even spared these 3 a glance, wouldn't have paid them much attention. However, Ma Yinlong had spent 3 days to introduce them to him, so Wang Chong had no choice but to take a closer look at them. These people. Are they from the Bureau of Punishments back then? Wang Chong looked at the trio and asked. He wasn't a fool either. Wang Chong could sense the same emotions as Ma Yinlong from these people. If he wasn't mistaken, they were also those who were implicated in the case back then. That's not entirely true. Solitary Wolf is from the Bureau of Military Personnel. Ma Yinlong pointed to the ferocious-looking mercenary expert who valued money more than his life, and said grimly, back then, many officials and officials of the 6 bureaus were assassinated, and it caused a huge uproar. The few of us were the ones in charge of that case. If the case couldn't be solved, everyone would be implicated. I was demoted to the Bureau of Personnel to copy books, the Eagle fired me from my post, and I spent a few years in jail. When I was released, I had to disguise myself as a bird dealer. Even though Steel Arms wasn't imprisoned, he was crippled by the Gogurians when he was investigating the case back then, and he spent his days getting drunk in taverns. As for Solitary Wolf, he concealed his identity and became a mercenary expert, working for anyone who paid him. Over the years, those brothers of mine from back then have either died or been severely injured. These are the only ones who managed to survive the assassination of the Gogurians. Ma Yinlong spoke of the past with deep sorrow. The eyes of the Eagle, Steel Arms, and Solitary Wolf also reddened. Even though Wang Chong hadn't been involved in the case back then, and he didn't know what they had gone through, he could sense it from Ma Yinlong's voice. More than a decade ago, when King Sojurim assassinated influential officials of the royal court, they were still ambitious youths in the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments, and they had bright futures ahead of them. But because of this case, the brothers who had investigated the case with them back then had either died or been severely injured. They had fallen from the lofty position of young heroes into the dust, falling to their current state. It was due to their sorrow that the reputation of King Sojurim rose, becoming the legend he was today. The others in the room seemed to have noticed this as well, and the atmosphere turned heavy. Let's not talk about this anymore. Perhaps, this is fate. After 15 years, we still can't escape from it. Since this matter started with us, let it end with us. The Eagle, Steel Arms, Solitary Wolf, and this is Wang Gongzi. His grandfather is Duke Jiu of the Tang dynasty. The trio had only appeared here out of respect for Ma Yinlong, but upon hearing that Wang Chang's grandfather was Duke Jiu, their expressions changed. Their gazes toward Wang Chong were filled with respect. Wang Gongzi. The 3 prideful men lowered their heads at the same time and gave a deep bow. Wang Gongzi, since you're Duke Jiu's grandson, you can't be considered as an outsider. Back then, due to the assassination of an important official of the royal court, we should have been executed. It was your grandfather and a group of officials who stood up to remonstrate with the Holy Emperor that we managed to survive. If Gongzi has any instructions for us in the future, feel free to speak. Steel Arms said, and the other 2 nodded in agreement. Hearing those words, Wang Chang's eyebrows shot up in astonishment. This was the first time he had heard of such a matter. Ever since he was young, including his previous life, he had never heard of it from his grandfather. If not for the trio mentioning it, he would have been completely oblivious to it. But thinking about it, such a huge case must have attracted a lot of attention. Given his grandfather's identity back then, it was only natural that he would be on the list of people paying attention to it. If Ma Yinlong and the others were to be executed by the royal court, given his grandfather's temper, there was no way he would stand by idly. Wang Gongzi, even though they look like they are in dire straits, lacking an arm, drunk, and fighting with their lives, they are still top-notch experts. In terms of their understanding of the Goguryans and their martial arts, there is probably no one in the capital who can surpass them. Ma Yinlong introduced by the side. Even though Steel Arms only has a single arm, his remaining right arm is extremely formidable. The sword in his right hand is ferocious and incomparably sharp. Even I might not be able to withstand a blow from his right hand. Solitary Wolf loves to fight with his life on the line. Even the Goguryan assassins would have to retreat before him. His strength isn't something that the guards in the king residence can compare to. Back then, Solitary Wolf was already an expert in the Bureau of Military Personnel, and now, he's even more formidable. If Gongzi keeps him by your side, he will be the best shield you can offer. Even if you were to encounter an assassination attempt from the Goguryan, Gongzi's life wouldn't be in danger. As long as Solitary Eye is still breathing, he won't allow anyone to approach Gongzi. Ma Yinlong's words carried a deeper meaning, and even without any explanation, Wang Chong could tell that Ma Yinlong was looking down on the people around him, thinking that they wouldn't be able to guarantee his safety. Even so, Wang Chong couldn't find any words to refute Ma Yinlong's words. Regardless of whether it was Myasame Ayaka or the experts of the Zhuang clan and Qi clan, none of them were capable of standing up to Ma Yinlong and the others. Putting everything aside, these people had been cultivating for much longer than Myasame Ayaka and the others. After all, they were still young. However, I really couldn't tell. That Steel Arms reeks of alcohol, but to think that he's actually a formidable expert. Wang Chong thought. He had a rough understanding of Ma Yinlong's means, and from what Ma Yinlong had said, the formidable Steel Arms was able to wield a sword with his right hand. Of the three, Ma Yinlong had already introduced two of them, so there was only one left. Wang Chong turned to look at the last person, the eagle. As for the eagle, his martial arts aren't too high. However, he has some unique skills, and this is what we need right now. This is also the reason why I brought him here. As for the last person, the eagle, Ma Yinlong didn't try to sell his connections. The eagle is the most formidable eagle tamer. Back then, he was publicly acknowledged as the #1 in the capital. This is also the reason why he was transferred here to assist in the investigation of the Goguryans. The eagles he trained are extremely intelligent, and they are skilled in tracking, scouting, and hunting. Back then, the person whom the Goguryans wanted to get rid of the most wasn't me or One-Eyed, but the eagle. Even in the past few years, the Goguryans have been trying to find news of him. Fortunately, other than us, no one else has seen him. I believe Gongzi has noticed that the Goguryans prefer to use specially trained ravens to transmit information. These ravens are extremely fast, and their talons are extremely powerful. Even Hai Dongqing is unable to catch them. However, the eagles trained by Old Eagle could successfully prey on them and track them without being discovered. If we wish to find the Goguryans' base outside the city without being discovered, we will need to use the abilities of the eagle. Ah! Wang Chong widened his eyes in shock as he stared at the eagle, who was dressed up as a bird merchant. At this moment, he finally understood why Ma Yinlong was so insistent on bringing him here. If he had the abilities of the eagle, the Goguryans wouldn't be able to hide from the eagle. Furthermore, no matter what kind of information they were sending, it would be captured in advance. Chapter 251. Good. With the seniors here, we won't have to worry about the Goguryans being unable to subdue them. Wang Chong chuckled. At this moment, he felt that his previous decision was a wise one. With Ma Yinlong and the others around, his plan could be considered complete. They had fought with the Gogurians for more than a decade now, and they had a deep understanding of their actions and habits. With them around, the success rate of the operation against the Gogurians would be greatly increased. With the eagle around, it won't be a problem for us to find the Gogurian base. However, this is far from sufficient. Ma Yinlong wasn't as optimistic as Wang Chong. It doesn't matter how many Gogurians, including the Gogurian assassins, die here. The Gogurian Empire can send more people over at any moment. To them, this bit of damage is nothing. The one I'm truly worried about is King Sojurim. Ma Yinlong frowned deeply. Shoot the horse first, and capture the bandits first. Even if we manage to foil their operation, I'm not confident that we'll be able to capture King Sojurim. As long as he's around, the Gogurians can still launch a second, third, or perhaps even more frenzied vengeance. This isn't a loss that we can afford. Ma Yinlong said. In an instant, the atmosphere in the room turned tense once more. Even the steel guards of the Qi clan could understand the meaning behind Ma Yinlong's words. King Sojurim was the root of everything. If they couldn't capture him, no matter how many Gogurians they killed, they would still be defeated if he were to carry out his vengeance. Brother Ma is right. Gongzi, you haven't interacted with King Sojurim before, so you don't understand him. He might seem cautious at times, but there are times when he can be extremely frenzied. He's definitely capable of doing such a thing. Steel Arms, who had been silent all this while, suddenly stepped forward and said with a grim expression. Back then, we did reap quite a harvest. We killed many of the Gogurian elites in the capital. But after the incident, King Sojurim began his vengeance. Under the frenzied assassination of the Gogurians, the brothers from back then were either killed or wounded. In the end, only the few of us were left. It was then that I lost my left hand. The other two did not speak, but their expressions revealed the same thoughts. Wang Chong frowned as he recalled the ferocity and viciousness of the Gogurian warriors on the night of the assault on the Kunwu training camp. Given their personalities, this kind of thing was completely possible. At this moment, Wang Chong realized that he had overlooked something. He had underestimated the matter of dealing with the Gogurians. Given the current situation, if they couldn't capture King Sojurim, their actions would be meaningless. Even if King Sojurim failed this time, he could still launch a second, third, or even fourth large-scale assassination. If they couldn't withstand it, they could even delay it indefinitely, waiting for them to relax before taking action. They could guard it for a month and be on high alert, but what about a year or two? The crux of this operation was no longer whether they could find the Gogurian base or how many Gogurians they could kill. Instead, it was whether they could capture King Sojurim, the Gogurian spy king. Seniors, do you have any ideas? Wang Chong raised his head and asked. Hehe, it's simple. Gongzi, weren't you afraid of alerting the Gogurian base? That's why you didn't make a move on them in the past. But the situation is different now. What we need to do is to alert them. Ma Yinlong narrowed his eyes, and a cold glint gleamed in them. It's about time to wipe out the Gogurian bases in the capital. Gongzi, there's no need to hold back in this operation. Only by destroying the Gogurian bases in the capital will we be able to foil King Sojurim's plans. Only then will we be able to make him reveal his flaws. I know him well, and he won't cancel his plans so easily. On the contrary, he will speed up the execution of his plans. As the Gogurian spy king, he's too conceited. Besides, to him, no matter how many losses there are, sacrificing the Gogurians is nothing to him. At the end of his words, Ma Yinlong slammed his fist on the table. Even Wang Chong felt his heart palpitating at the sight of it. As his nemesis, he really wanted to kill King Sojurim with his own hands. Don't worry. Leave this matter to me. After a moment of silence, Wang Chong nodded. After leaving the Royal Jade Pavilion, Wang Chong headed straight for the King of Song's residence. From the King of Song, Wang Chong obtained a token for the mobilization of the royal guards. Only a king of the royal family like the King of Song was capable of such a feat. After settling this matter, Wang Chong went to meet his uncle, Li Lin. Dealing with the Goguryons would be a huge contribution if he could do it well. As the saying went, keep the goodies within the family. Toward his own family, Wang Chong treated them well. In any case, he wouldn't be able to benefit from this matter. Wang Chong's uncle, Li Lin, was also very straightforward. After hearing Wang Chong's words, he discussed it with the commander of the Imperial Army, Zhao Fengchen, and decided to dispatch a large group of Imperial Army soldiers to assist Li Lin. With this group of soldiers, Wang Chong had around 4,000 experts under him. Based on Wang Chong's request, there were also quite a few master archers among them. Putting aside using this army to encircle the Goguryons, it was more than sufficient to fight a small-scale battle on the battlefield. The capital was under the feet of the Son of Heaven. In order to not cause too much panic and chaos among the populace, as well as to prevent the Goguryons from sensing anything amiss beforehand, the operation was decided to be carried out at night instead. Are you all ready? Amidst the darkness, Wang Chong stood beneath a tree and gazed at the residence from afar. The lights in the residence were extremely bright, and they served as a beacon to guide the crowd. Get ready. Master archers were stationed at all the crucial junctions. If anyone were to leave the residence, death would be the only outcome. Gongzi, don't worry. On the crown of a lush tree behind him, a speed-type Imperial Army soldier squatted down and said grimly. From Zhang Xian's angle, he could see numerous fully armored Imperial Army soldiers surrounding the courtyard in the distance. These Imperial Army soldiers were well-trained elites, and according to Wang Chong's request, the frontmost row was equipped with heavy armor and shields. The encirclement was slowly shrinking, but without Wang Chong's orders, no one dared to attack recklessly. Get ready. Release the signal. Wang Chong stared into the distance with a cold expression before swinging his arm down. Boom! The response to Wang Chong's words was a brilliant firework that soared into the clouds. The dazzling sparks and a long trail of smoke trailed behind it, making it particularly eye-catching in the dark night. This was the signal to attack. Kill! In the next instant, battle cries reverberated in the air. Under the starry sky, brilliant halos of thorns bloomed in the darkness like beautiful flowers. From the first base where Wang Chong and the others were at, to the second base, to the third base, all the way to the 14th base, almost all of the Goguryons' bases in the Tang dynasty's capital were under attack. 3,000 to 4,000 royal guards and the city defense army were like wolves and tigers. Under the starry night, they crossed the city walls and charged into the courtyards with high walls. Shield-bearers, master archers, cavalrymen. All of them worked together, from defense to offense. All of the Goguryon bases were tightly surrounded, making it impossible for even a drop of water to pass through. Enemy attack. From afar, a shrill cry in Goguryon resounded across the sky. The Goguryon sentries had finally noticed the Imperial Army. All of a sudden, a familiar voice sounded in Wang Chong's ears. Boom! Along with this voice, a powerful gale blew, and surges of energy surged into Wang Chong's body from all directions. What's going on? Sensing the changes in his body, Wang Chong was stunned. The operation had just begun, and he hadn't killed a single Goguryon yet. Why would he receive such a notice? However, before Wang Chong could clear his doubts, something even more shocking happened. Chapter 252. The battle had only just begun, and there were definitely less than 100 casualties in the first base. Without a doubt, the deaths of the Goguryons mentioned by the Stone of Destiny definitely involved the other Goguryon bases and bases. Could it be because of this? In an instant, a thought flashed across Wang Chong's mind, and he took out a luxurious golden token. This token was given to him by the King of Song, and it represented that he was the commander of this operation. After much thought, Wang Chong realized that the only reason why the deaths of the Gogurians in the other bases could be attributed to him was because of this token. Could it be that this token, or perhaps, my official rank can be of use in this operation, and I don't have to kill them personally? Wang Chong thought. At this point, Wang Chong was delighted. Somehow, Wang Chong felt that he had found a shortcut to raise the bane of the battlefield halo. Hong Long. At this moment, Wang Chong's body finally completed the final transformation. Hong Long Long, a furious gale blew, and the rumbling of thunder echoed in Wang Chong's head. Following which, a massive ripple suddenly surged out, and a powerful surge of energy gushed out. Congratulations to user for killing more than 100 Gogurian warriors. The bane of the battlefield halo has been raised from level 0 to level 1. The cold and familiar voice of the Stone of Destiny sounded in Wang Chong's head. At the same time, Wang Chong's bane of the battlefield halo expanded outward. In the distance, the entire Gogurian base was shrouded in this halo. Halos suddenly appeared around the bodies of the Gogurian warriors, shocking the Imperial Army soldiers who were fighting with them. They thought that they had used some sort of trump card to boost their fighting prowess. But what was even more shocking was the Gogurians on the other side. They had already been weakened significantly, but this time, they were weakened even more. Some of the true martial realm Tier 1 experts with one ring dimmed, like candles in the wind that were about to be extinguished. On the other hand, the Origin Energy Tier 9 Gogurian experts were affected even more. Not only did they fall from Origin Energy Tier 9 to Origin Energy Tier 8, they even showed signs of falling toward Origin Energy Tier 7. What the hell is going on? Li Jiuhuan's hair was disheveled. He was shocked and angry. As the leader of the base, he wasn't affected by the bane of the battlefield at all, so he didn't understand what was happening to the others. However, everyone's strength had been greatly reduced, and they were completely out of sorts. There was no doubt about this. Retreat! 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 Li Jiuhuan was shocked and angry at the same time, shouting repeatedly. These imperial guards of the Tang dynasty came in a menacing manner, and there were many elites among them. It could be seen that they came prepared. Li Jiuhuan was well aware that they had already been exposed. They could no longer keep this base. Li Jiuhuan's only hope now was that they were the only ones exposed. Xiao xiao xiao. In the courtyard, countless steel arrows whizzed forth like venomous snakes. At this crucial moment, the two Gogurian Condor snipers stationed in the first base came into play. Even though there were only two of them, they were top-notch Condor snipers. With a single move, they shot out 4 to 5 lethal arrows, shrouding all of the Imperial Army soldiers in the courtyard. Hong Long. But not too long after they made their move, an earth-shattering sound echoed in the distance. Before Li Jiuhuan could react, boom boom. Not too long after the two Condor snipers made their move, 2 thick and long arrows pierced through their chests, and they were pinned to the ground. Too hurried. Too fast. Without giving anyone any time to dodge, the two Condor snipers whom the Gogurians had spent a great deal of effort to groom were pinned to the ground in an instant, and they couldn't be any more dead. Li Jiuhuan's face also turned as pale as a sheet of paper. He stared into the distance, and the color drained from his face. So. Without the slightest hesitation, Li Jiuhuan suddenly rose from the ground and leaped onto the roof. Without stopping for even a moment, he fled eastward without a second thought. Everyone here was doomed. Not a single one of them would be able to escape. Li Jiuhuan knew that he could only protect himself now. Where do you think you're going? A deafening bellow echoed. Just as Li Jiuhuan was about to reach the wall, an Imperial Army commander dashed forward like a hawk, and with a slash of his saber, he blocked Li Jiuhuan's path in midair. At this moment, the 2-meter-tall master archer sent over by the King of Song also slowly lowered the extra-large bow in his hands. There wasn't the slightest change in his expression, as though he had just done something insignificant. Well done. Under the shade of a tree, Wang Chong was delighted to see this sight. He raised his thumb and complimented the other party generously. This fellow was too formidable. He was a one-sided slaughter. If such an expert had been present on the night of the assault on Kunwu, he would have been able to defeat the several hundred master archers of the Gogurians and Turks. The king of Song had sent him an incredible expert. Clang! Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong unsheathed his sword and bellowed as he charged into the distance. Gongzi, be careful. Seeing Wang Chong make a move, Mayasame Ayaka was alarmed. As though a shadow, she dashed out from the nearby forest and hurriedly followed after him. Ha, don't worry. With such a large army, what danger could there possibly be? Wang Chong laughed heartily. Driving phantom movement art to its limits, he dashed forward like a wisp of black smoke. The familiar voice in his head was still gushing down like a waterfall. Raging winds blew in all directions, and immense energy was gushing endlessly into Wang Chong's body, strengthening Wang Chong's strength. The might of the bane of the battlefield halo continued to rise, and invisible ripples began to spread outward with Wang Chong at the center. At this moment, not only was it shrouding the entire Gogurian first base, it was even spreading toward the Gogurian second base in the distance. The area it covered was truly frightening. And under the influence of this halo's power, the true martial realm experts were affected more and more severely. Those, one-ringed martial artists, in the first level of the true martial realm were already greatly affected. The cyan thorny halo around their bodies was like a candle in the wind, on the verge of collapse. And as Wang Chong's bane of the battlefield halo continued to grow stronger, it was now bursting like a bubble. All of these people had their martial halos stripped away. On the other hand, after the Origin Energy Realm Gogurian experts fell to Origin Energy Tier 7, the effects of the halo lessened, and they didn't fall any further. Wang Chong was perplexed at the start, but he soon understood the reason behind it. The halo only affected the origin energy in a martial artist's body, and it didn't have much of an effect on one's physical strength. Thus, after the Origin Energy Realm Gogurian warriors fell to Origin Energy Tier 7, they wouldn't fall any further. Even so, the might of the bane of the battlefield halo was still fearsome. Almost all of the Gogurians in the first base had fallen by an entire realm. And this was the might of a war-related halo. There was no longer any suspense in the battle in the first base. Before Wang Chong could participate in any of the battles, the battle in the courtyard had already ended. The entire courtyard was filled with Gogurian corpses, swords, and arrows. Reporting to Gongzi, there are a few metal chests in the Gogurian base. After the battle ended, an Imperial Army soldier came to report that they had found a few huge chests in the underground chamber of the first base. Wang Chong followed the Imperial Army soldier in, only to see several large metal chests, all of them locked, placed in a row in the middle of an underground chamber. What are these? Could they be weapons? Wang Chong thought. Since the Gogurians were prepared to wreak havoc in the capital, they must have prepared a huge amount of weapons. With a thought, Wang Chong whipped out his Wuzi steel weapon, and with a keng sound, he sliced open the copper lock. Then, with a huang sound, he opened one of the metal chests. In the next instant, something unexpected happened. As soon as the chest was opened, a golden glow mixed with a rich aroma and mist drifted out from within. What was lying in the chest wasn't a weapon used by the Gogurians for their rebellion, but a chest full of highly aged Gogurian ginseng. SSS. Upon seeing the chest full of Gogurian ginseng, putting aside Wang Chong, even the Imperial Army soldier who was reporting the news couldn't help but suck in a deep breath of cold air. Even though they didn't know much about the Gogurian Empire, they had a rough idea that the ginseng produced by the Gogurian Empire was a top-notch martial artifact. There were at least 500 to 600 Gogurians in this chest. The value of the ginseng was inestimable. I've struck gold. Looking at the dazzling Gogurian ginseng, Wang Chong was stunned for a moment. The harvest was far greater than he had expected, such that Wang Chong couldn't react in time. If the chests here aren't weapons but ginseng, doesn't that mean that, looking at the huge metal chests, Wang Chong suddenly felt agitated, as though he had been struck by a great fortune. Keng keng keng. With such a thought in mind, Wang Chong brandished his Wuzi steel sword. Keng keng keng, he walked over and chopped down all of the copper chests. He opened the chests one after another, and every single one of them was filled with a golden glow. 12 chests of Goguryan ginseng. I've struck gold this time. In that instant, Wang Chong couldn't help but burst into laughter. Gongzi, how should we deal with these Goguryan ginseng? The imperial army soldier by the side bowed and asked respectfully. He didn't seem to have any intention of getting his hands on the ginseng. Wang Chong was the commander of this operation, and he had the token of the King of Song on him. As such, he represented the King of Song. Putting aside the Goguryan ginseng, even if there was a mountain of gold, silver, or even immortal pills here, no one would dare to vie with the King of Song for it. The imperial army still had this rule. Leave one chest for the brothers to enjoy. As for the rest, bring them to my residence. Wang Chong narrowed his eyes and pondered for a moment. Then, with a wave of his hand, he decided on where the Goguryan ginseng would go. As the commander of this operation, he had the authority to do so. He believed that even if the King of Song were to learn of this, he wouldn't say anything. This operation to wipe out the Goguryans and destroy their influence in the capital was a huge contribution. He wouldn't be able to earn any credit, and he wouldn't be promoted either. However, these benefits were undeniable. He believed that no one would dare to vie with him. Thank you, Gongzi. Upon hearing that Wang Chong had left a chest for his brothers, the imperial army member who had asked for instructions was delighted. According to the rules, Wang Chong could have kept the ginseng for himself. Yet, he actually gave them a chest. This was a huge favor. Chapter 253. The distribution of the spoils of war was soon decided, and all of the Goguryan corpses in the base were looted clean. Wang Chong didn't forget that each of these Goguryans had a Goguryan ginseng. While the battle at the first base had ended, the battles at the other bases were still ongoing. Congratulations to user for killing 301 soldiers of the Goguryeo Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 302 soldiers of the Goguryeo Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 303 soldiers of the Goguryeo Empire. The familiar voice in his head continued. The number of Goguryans Wang Chong had killed swiftly surpassed 300, and it was still rising at an alarming rate. The exhilaration of growing strength was indescribable. I didn't think that borrowing the token of the King of Song would bring me such great benefits. However, it's a pity that such a good thing only comes once. I'll have to return it to the King of Song after the operation. Wang Chong couldn't help but feel some regret. Princes had their own tokens, and officials had their own tokens. These tokens issued by the royal court had to be kept close to their bodies. They could be lent out occasionally, but it was impossible for them to not return it for a long period of time. Thus, Wang Chong's beautiful plans could only be wishful thinking at this point. After leaving the first base, Wang Chong brought Myasame Ayaka and the experts of the Zhuang and Qi clans with him, and they rushed to the other bases. Wang Chong's plan was simple. Due to the augmentation of his bane of the battlefield, the strength of the Goguryans in the first base had been greatly weakened. However, the same couldn't be said for the other bases. If he were to encounter those troublesome Goguryan bases with too many experts, his bane of the battlefield would be able to end the battle swiftly. Congratulations to user for killing 485 soldiers of the Goguryan Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 486 soldiers of the Goguryan Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 487 soldiers of the Goguryan Empire. The information in his head flowed like a waterfall. At this moment, Wang Chang's bane of the battlefield had already expanded to a radius of more than 8,000 meters, equivalent to a distance of 16 li. About an hour later, all the battles were over. At the same time, the total number of Goguryeo warriors killed by Wang Chong also stopped at 623. Wang Chang's bane of the battlefield, halo, also had a range of 11,000 meters. Other than that, there were dozens of boxes of Goguryeo ginseng, and 80% of them were golden in color. Very few of them were the ordinary white ginseng that was only a few decades old. All of these iron boxes were sent to Wang Chang's mansion. This was the reward for being the commander and the victor. Ha ha ha, Chonger, we've done a great service this time. Outside the walls of No. 8's base, a towering tree towered into the clouds, brimming with vitality. Beneath the tree, Uncle Li Lin's face was flushed red. Looking at the blazing flames in front of him, he was in high spirits and exhilaration. He really needed this kind of military merit. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to rely solely on Zhao Fengchen to promote him in the imperial army. With this meritorious deed, even without Zhao Fengchen's promotion, he would still be able to rise through the ranks. The more he looked at his nephew, the more he liked him, and the prouder he felt. Other people relied on fawning on their superiors, but he relied on his nephew to rise. However, Li Lin didn't think much of it. To have such a talented son in the clan was something to be proud of. After a few decades of silence, he was finally going to soar into the sky. Hee, uncle, don't worry. This is just a small contribution. Once we capture King Sojurim, it'll be a huge contribution. It'll be easy for uncle to be promoted in the future. Wang Chong said with a smile as he stood beside his uncle. After a period of absence, Wang Chong realized that his uncle had changed a little. His figure was tall and straight, as though a spear was pierced into the ground. Furthermore, his spirit, energy, and psyche were united, and he exuded an aura of boundless vitality. Without a doubt, Wang Chong's uncle's cultivation had improved significantly during this period of time. The cultivation technique he had given him had finally come into effect. His efforts hadn't been in vain. Wang Chong felt gratified as well. The reason why Wang Chong introduced Zhao Fengchen to Uncle Li Lin was because he didn't want his uncle to be beneath Zhao Fengchen for the rest of his life. Following Zhao Fengchen was just a means, a process, and not his final goal. Wang Chong's final goal was for his uncle to become an independent existence in the imperial army, not a follower. Uncle, carry 5 boxes of those Goguryeo ginseng over. Also, I'll give you a few more pills after some time. Wang Chong suddenly said. Hee, why? Are you afraid that your uncle's cultivation is too low? Li Lin turned around and chuckled. Hee, uncle, do you think that your position is too high? If I recall correctly, the imperial army should be divided into many factions. It's always better to be stronger. Besides, the ranks of the imperial army are also linked to one's cultivation, right? There's nothing wrong with uncle bringing these things over to increase your strength as much as possible. Wang Chong said. He had intended to give a few more boxes over, but 5 boxes already amounted to more than 3,000 Goguryeo ginseng. It was sufficient for Uncle Li Lin to cultivate by himself. Li Lin didn't say a word, but he fell into deep thought. His initial intention was to reject Wang Chong's offer. After all, the contribution he had was more than enough. As for the Goguryeo ginseng, since they were his kin, there was no need for him to fight over them. However, upon hearing Wang Chong's final words, Li Lin fell silent. There were a few things that Wang Chong said that the imperial army was divided into many factions, and they were far more formidable than the outside world could imagine. Just by following Zhao Fengchen for a short period of time, he could already feel a strong sense of rejection. In the imperial army, strength was everything, and the fist was king. Whoever had the bigger fist had the right to speak, and they would be respected by others. All right. Li Lin nodded. He had finally changed his mind. Only then did Wang Chong smile. Reporting to the two lords, the battlefield has been cleaned up. At this moment, an imperial guard trotted over and stood respectfully before the two of them. Good. You may leave. Li Lin waved his hands and dismissed the imperial army member. Then, he turned to look at Wang Chong with a passionate gaze. Chonger, the battle is over. What do you plan to do next? Hehe, I hope you didn't alert the enemy with the final base? Wang Chong said. Hehe, I didn't move. Li Lin nodded in understanding. Alright, let's retreat. After sending Uncle Li Lin off, Wang Chong turned around and headed straight for the Royal Jade Pavilion. This was an opportune moment. The shops in the capital weren't open at night. And the Wang clan was too conspicuous. However, with the Royal Jade Pavilion as his base, it was much more convenient. He didn't have to worry about attracting attention. Even if others saw him eating in the pavilion, they would only think that he liked the food here, so he came here more frequently. Never would they have thought that he had bought this place. Even more so, Ma Yinlong, the Eagle, Steel Arms, and Solitary Wolf were all stationed here. How is it? As soon as Wang Chong went up the stairs, the four immediately gathered around him and asked anxiously. Wang Chong made an okay gesture, and upon seeing the doubtful gazes of the four, he realized that they didn't understand what he meant. It's done. With a smile, Wang Chong corrected himself. You must be joking. After mobilizing so many imperial army members and borrowing the prestige of the King of Song, it would be a wonder if they still couldn't deal with this. Who? Hearing Wang Chong's words, the four heaved a long sigh of relief. It was as though their hearts had finally settled back into their chests. Wang Gongzi, please don't blame us for the operation tonight. King Sojurim is too familiar with us. Thus, none of us can participate in the operation tonight. Not only so, not even a single one of the eagles can be released. It's not a good thing to be exposed too early. If King Sojurim realizes that we are participating in the operation tonight, the nature of the operation will be different. In fact, he might even cancel the operation altogether. Ma Yinlong suddenly thought of something and explained. Don't worry, I understand. Wang Chong chuckled casually and waved his hands, gesturing for Ma Yinlong to be at ease. Since he trusted Ma Yinlong and the others, how could he possibly doubt them for not putting in enough effort? Looking at Wang Chong's carefree expression, the four couldn't help but be impressed. Even though this Gongzi was young, there wasn't the slightest hint of inexperience in him. Even though he came from a noble clan, he didn't have the air of a profligate scion. After 15 years, there might really be hope for them to capture King Sojurim this time around. Elder, what should we do next? The group sat cross-legged on the floor and formed a circle. Wang Chong humbly asked for guidance. Gongzi, did you touch the last base? Not yet. Good, let's surround it. The crux of our operation lies in that base. If we were to destroy all of the bases, the Gogurians would think that we have grasped their movements. On the other hand, if we were to destroy some of the bases, the Gogurians would think that we have grasped their movements. The greater the momentum of our operation, the more bases we destroy, the stronger their conviction will be. We understand King Sojurim's mentality all too well. He's too conceited, so conceited that once he decides on a plan, he won't change it easily. No matter how great the sacrifice is, it's meaningless to him. He won't care. Our current advantage is that he's in the light while we're in the dark. No matter how many Gogurian bases you destroy or how many people you kill, you're still a newcomer. King Sojurim doesn't understand you at all. He doesn't know that we're the ones hiding behind your back. This is our greatest advantage. Ma Yinlong said grimly. Wait a moment. Wang Chong suddenly interrupted Ma Yinlong. Elder, you said that King Sojurim doesn't understand me, right? I suddenly have an idea. After which, Wang Chong revealed his idea. Ha ha ha, that works too. Since we're going to do it, let's make it bigger. The more ostentatious you are, the more King Sojurim will be unable to see through you. At the same time, he will look down on you. Wang Gongzi, let's do as you say. Hearing Wang Chang's idea, Ma Yinlong chuckled. If they were to go along with Wang Chang's plan, it would be much easier for the plan to succeed. As for what happens next, the eagle, I'll leave it to you. The eagle nodded solemnly. Chapter 254. Boom. When the news of the dozen Gogurian bases being destroyed spread out, it caused a huge uproar in the capital. In the past, it wasn't a secret that the other foreign countries had spies in the Tang dynasty. However, none of them had built such a massive spy network like the Gogurian Empire. This was especially so after the corpses were displayed in the capital, causing a huge uproar. 500 to 600 Gogurian soldiers, this was a scale far greater than any other foreign country. It was on the scale of a minor rebellion. Furthermore, according to the news from the royal court, the bases they had built had a history of more than a decade. Through these bases, they had carried out countless assassinations and sabotage. In fact, the assault on the Kunwa training camp a while ago was one of their most outstanding feats. The Gogurian soldiers were the best evidence of this. After the large number of Gogurian soldiers were displayed, it further solidified the treacherous intentions of the Gogurian soldiers, causing a huge uproar in the capital. The city gate guards and imperial army began to move out to apprehend those who had slipped through the net. Even the Gogurian territory in the west of the capital was invaded by a large group of soldiers. The ferocious and valiant Gogurians chose to keep a low profile in the face of the rage of the citizens of the capital, cooperating with them. Furthermore, they made it clear that they were honest merchants, completely different from the Gogurian assassins and warriors who engaged in sabotage. There was a world of difference between them and the Gogurian warriors. In a single day, a large number of Gogurians were apprehended. Faced with the large-scale operation of the royal court, the merchants of the various countries of the western regions chose to remain silent. Clearly, they could sense that the situation this time was different from the past. Assassination and sabotage couldn't be compared to legitimate business activities. The excuses they used in the past couldn't be used here. As the matter of the Gogurians caused a huge uproar in the capital, more and more details were revealed. In the operation last night, the commander of the imperial army went by the name of Li Lin, and he had contributed greatly to it. Due to this matter, he was commended by the imperial army and promoted to a grade 5 Dragonfang lieutenant. However, the one who uncovered the Gogurian spies was a name that the citizens of the capital couldn't be more familiar with, Wang Chong. It was during the Kunwa night raid that he discovered the traces of the Gogurians and traced them all the way to their bases. Eventually, he led the imperial army to wipe them out. It could be said that Wang Chong was the true hero behind the scenes. Bastard! In an unknown stronghold deep in the mountains outside the capital, an awe-inspiring figure slammed his fist on a table, exuding a terrifying aura. In front of him, 6 figures knelt on the ground. Their bodies shivered, and they kept quiet like cicadas in the dark. It's such a big operation. Didn't you guys notice it at all? There was no light in the room. That awe-inspiring figure leaned forward slightly, but a pair of eyes emitted a cold light in the darkness. That huge pressure caused people's hearts to tremble. Your Highness, their actions were very sudden. We didn't receive any news beforehand. Furthermore, they were directly mobilized from the imperial army. Late at night is the time when our brothers are most relaxed. With more than a dozen bases moving together, we didn't have any time to react, much less escape. The mastermind behind their scheme is extremely formidable. He didn't intend to give our men the slightest chance of survival. A black-robed assassin kneeling on the floor said. Outside of Goguryeo, there was only one person who could be addressed as Your Highness. Without a doubt, the person before him was the highest authority of the Goguryeo Empire in the Central Plains, the Tang dynasty, King Sojurum. It's impossible for our bases to be seen through so easily. Did you find any traces of the Fang of the White Tiger? King Sojurum asked coldly in the darkness. A chilling aura enveloped the entire room. More than a dozen bases had been destroyed. This was something that had never happened before. His first thought was that the experts from the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments had participated in the operation. Only those old foes would have such a deep understanding of the Gogurians. Nothing. When the incident happened, our men checked the surroundings, but they didn't find any traces of the Fang of the White Tiger. Another Gogurian assassin said. Even though more than a dozen bases had been destroyed, the Gogurians were scattered all over the city. They weren't confined to a single base. It was just that the base had the most people. When the incident happened, the base was on fire. It was impossible for them to not notice such a big thing. Even though they didn't dare to approach the scene of the battle, they could still observe from the outside. As such, the Gogurians had gathered quite a bit of intelligence regarding last night's operation. Could this really be a coincidence? King Sojurum asked with narrowed eyes. Different emotions flashed through his eyes, but the kneeling Gogurian assassins lowered their heads even more fearfully. Even though we can't be certain, based on the news we received, this matter is likely to be a coincidence. Also, we have some news regarding the matter Your Highness asked us to look into. As the third Gogurian assassin spoke, he took out a scroll from his bosom and passed it over respectfully. Every single Gogurian assassin had their own responsibilities. Clearly, he was in charge of gathering intelligence. The room was silent. King Sojurum waited for 3 seconds before taking the scroll from the Gogurian assassin's hands. With just a single glance, King Sojurum's face warped slightly. He flipped through 2 to 3 pages and continued reading without saying a single word. Your Highness, we have investigated the identity of that Wang Chong from last night. He's the grandson of Duke Jiu of the Tang dynasty, and the Imperial Army commander, Li Lin, is his uncle. The two of them have a close relationship. Even though he's young, we can't underestimate him. The Tang dynasty consort Tai Jin incident and the regional commander's incident all have traces of this young man. In fact, there's even a rumor that the backer of the Yao clan, Yao Chong, who had been at odds with the Wang clan for decades, lowered his head to Wang Jiuling and admitted his mistake. From all of these, this young man is extremely talented. He isn't the profligate scion that we thought him to be. On top of that, he has a close relationship with the King of Song of the Tang dynasty, and he has been to the King of Song's residence many times before. The Imperial Army commander who carried out the operation last night was also mobilized by him through the King of Song's influence. Otherwise, given his uncle Li Lin's position, it's impossible for him to mobilize such a large number of Imperial Army commanders. On top of that, our men found traces of him at the scene of the operation. As he has quite a few experts by his side, we didn't dare to make a move recklessly. More importantly, we found his name in the Kunwa training camp, and he was at White Tiger Peak, the place where the operation was first carried out. At this point, the third assassin paused for a moment before speaking with a deep meaning in his voice. On top of that, our men found a few students from the Kunwa training camp, and they found out that this lad had led his men to seek reinforcements from other camps. At the end of his words, the third assassin's voice was brimming with killing intent. At the same time, the other assassins also began emanating killing intent. Without a doubt, the matter was clear. It was inconceivable that more than a dozen of their bases had been destroyed, and it had dealt a heavy blow to them. However, judging from the deeds of that Wang Chong, it wasn't impossible for him to discover their bases. A person who could cause such a huge commotion in the imperial court of the Tang dynasty couldn't be judged with common sense. Appearance was no longer of any use to judge a person. No matter what he did, it was entirely possible. In an instant, the room fell silent. From King Sojurum to the 6 Gogurian assassins, everyone was silent. Everyone could sense the weight of this news. Ever since the Fang of the White Tiger more than a decade ago, they hadn't met such an opponent in the capital of the Tang dynasty. Unlike the Fang of the White Tiger, the Fang of the White Tiger was a failure. But this young man named Wang Chong was only in his teens, and he had already brought them 2 failures and nearly 700 deaths. Compared to the Fang of the White Tiger back then, this Wang Chong was far more menacing and dangerous. This wasn't a good thing for the Goguryeo Empire and the people in this base. Everyone knew what this meant. This Wang Chong had to be eliminated, or else the threat he posed to Goguryeo would only grow greater and greater. Let me ask you, is the final base safe? Have you checked it? Are there any suspicious traces of the Tang people in the surroundings? After an unknown period of time, King Sojurim was the first to speak. His voice was filled with deep contemplation. I've checked it. Nothing. Everything around the base is normal. It seems like the Tang people haven't discovered this base yet. One of the assassins said. King Sojurim didn't say anything, but those who were familiar with him could sense that his gaze had relaxed significantly. A single base meant nothing to the Goguryeo Empire. Even if everyone in it were to die, it wouldn't mean much to them. However, the meaning behind this small base wasn't as simple as it seemed. It seems like he's still too young. In the darkness, King Sojurim raised his head and sneered coldly. Gather all of the Empire's warriors. King Sojurim stood up from his seat and said a few words. Wang. But the 6 in the room jolted in shock and abruptly raised their heads. Your Highness, should we move now? The Tang dynasty is currently at its most guarded against us. If we move now, we'll suffer heavy losses. They knew that King Sojurim wasn't a person who would give up easily, but none of them could have imagined that he would be in such a hurry to make a move at such a critical juncture. What's fake is real, and what's real is fake. This is the time when the Tang dynasty is at its most guarded, but at the same time, it's also the time when they're at their most relaxed. They would never have expected us to launch an assassination while they're conducting a large-scale search. King Sojurim raised his head with a disdainful gaze. Even though his voice wasn't loud, it carried an unquestionable tone. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, this has always been the style of our Goguryeo Empire. Retaliating is the best response to their attacks, and it's also the best consolation for our fallen warriors. As for sacrifice, what does a little sacrifice matter to the Empire? Those warriors who have sacrificed their lives for the Empire are honorable. The Empire will remember them. Those words extinguished all the objections in everyone's hearts. Reverence shone on the faces of the 6 assassins. Yes, Your Highness. 3 days later, the final batch of warriors will arrive. Let's move out. Also, add the Wang clan into the assassination list as well. Aren't we going to assassinate the influential officials of the Tang dynasty? This clan won't make a difference. There's always a price to pay for acting smart. At this point, King Sojurim harumphed coldly and walked down from his throne. The fate of the Wang clan had been decided. Yes. Chapter 255. While King Sojurim and the group of Goguryeo assassins were discussing their next course of action, no one noticed that in the depths of the night sky above their heads, a massive eagle was circling in the air. The eagle didn't make a sound, nor did it let out any cry. However, its sharp eyes were able to see everything in the dark as if it was daytime. So, after an unknown period of time, the eagle finally turned around and glided toward the northeast amidst the night breeze. Flick flick, the eagle glided down from the treetops and landed on a hill in the mountain. From the darkness, a rough arm reached out and caught the intelligent, well-trained eagle. At the same time, another arm tossed a piece of dried meat over. The eagle caught it and swallowed it in a few bites. To think that the Goguryeon's base would be here. Lone Wolf frowned as he stroked his chin. There was an indescribable feeling in his heart. From his angle, he could vaguely see the top of a monastery in the distance. Those Gogurians sure are cunning. To think that they would use a monastery in the depths of the mountain as their base of operations. If we didn't know about it, who would have thought that it would be their base of operations? Steel Hands was also feeling extremely fortunate. If not for the eagle noticing the Gogurians' communication ravens entering the monastery, he would have never imagined that the Gogurians would be hiding here. I remember that 4 months ago, a merchant reported to the royal court that he would donate a monastery in the depths of the mountain outside the city. From the looks of it now, the Gogurians have been plotting this for a very long time. Wang Chong looked in the southwest direction at the massive monastery with a deep frown on his forehead. Great Senior, this temple is very famous. Who could have thought that it would be a base of operations for the Gogurians? Thinking about it, the reason why King Sojurim was able to escape from the encirclement and return to the Gogurian Empire safely was probably due to this monastery. Since this monastery is a base of operations for the Gogurians, there's no doubt that the merchant who donated the money is a Gogurian as well. I heard that he also recruited a group of workers and forbade others to come near during the construction period. From the looks of it, not only the monks in the monastery, even the workers are Gogurians. There's no way the Gogurians would leave such a huge matter to an outsider. The night wind whistled. On the hill, everyone's expressions were solemn. King Sojurim was much more cunning than they had expected. This monastery took 4 months to build, and all of the workers and monks were disguised as Gogurians. Even if something happened, not many people would link it to this temple. Because all of this was done in the open, under everyone's eyes. No matter how many people they have, no matter how cunning they are, this operation is destined to fail. The eagle, what's the situation? Ma Yinlong stood under a pine tree and turned to look at the eagle, who was feeding the eagle. Not good. There's a sentry every 3 steps and a sentry every 5. I'm afraid that the Gogurians will notice us before we even get close to the monastery. Not only so, the terrain here is complicated, and there are mountains and forests all around, making it convenient for us to escape. If the Gogurians realize that their plan isn't working, they can just abandon the monastery and escape at any moment. The eagle tossed the last piece of jerky to the eagle on his arm with a grim expression. The Gogurians were far more vigilant than they had imagined, and there were no blind spots at all. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for them to get close to the monastery. Before the army could even get close, the Gogurians would have already fled. Hearing the eagle's words, everyone frowned. Even if they managed to find the Gogurian base, it would be difficult for them to accomplish their mission if they didn't resolve this problem. Perhaps, they might even fail at the very end. Not only so, have you forgotten about the elites of the Gogurians? Since King Sojurim has decided to make a move on the officials of the royal court, he must have mobilized the top-notch experts of the Gogurians, perhaps even the generals of the Gogurian Empire. If we don't have enough people, not only will we be ineffective, we might even be defeated by them. Steel Arms said grimly. He had lost an arm, and the painful lesson from more than a decade ago still left a deep impression on him. Gongzi, you must pay attention to this matter. The Gogurians in the base that we have encircled are only ordinary soldiers. On the other hand, the subordinates that King Sojurim is sending to assassinate the officials are likely to be elites of the Gogurian Empire. We have to be extremely vigilant in order to encircle them. Otherwise, if the mission fails, none of us will be able to bear the consequences. The matter regarding the Gogurians had caused a huge uproar in the capital, and it had attracted the attention of everyone. Even the foreigners of the western regions were paying close attention to this matter. If the mission were to fail, even the Wang clan would be unable to bear the consequences. Leave such a small matter to me. After a moment of contemplation, Wang Chong smiled. I will coordinate with the royal court through the King of Song and have them deploy their best experts. As long as I tell them that the incident from more than a decade ago will repeat itself, they will understand the severity of the matter. The royal court will know what they should do. The incident from more than a decade ago had left a huge impact on the royal court. Even now, many of the officials still had a deep impression of it. For such a matter, Wang Chong didn't need to beg too much. All he needed to do was to describe the matter. Wang Chong believed that there would be many officials who would take the initiative to request for more experts to be deployed, so there was no need for him to worry about this. Ma Yinlong, the eagle, steel arms, and solitary wolf glanced at one another, and they nodded in agreement. This was the effect of one's influence and background. What Wang Chong could accomplish with a single word was something that they couldn't do even if they were beaten to death. At the very least, if they had a relationship with Wang Chong back then, they wouldn't have suffered such a terrible defeat. Their brothers had contributed to the brilliance of King Sojurim, and they wouldn't have been plagued by nightmares ever since. On the one hand, the four of them were filled with regret, but on the other hand, they were glad that they had the help of a king of nobility, generals, and ministers. Furthermore, the four of them had been expelled from the Bureau of Punishments and the Rear Division, so they could only rely on Wang Chong for this matter. Then, there's the sentries. They're the crux to the success of the operation, so we have to find a way to deal with them. Steel Arms said. Hee, don't worry, they won't be able to escape. Wang Chong chuckled. Stretching out a finger, he drew on the ground. This sudden action immediately caught everyone's attention. I've just thought about it. This is the map of the area, so there's no need for us to seal off the entire area. As long as we send a troop here and here, they won't be able to escape. They won't be able to escape. Wang Chong quickly drew out the map. In his previous life, he was extremely familiar with the mountains and rivers of the Central Plains. It didn't take long for him to finish drawing it. Even Ma Yinlong and Solitary Wolf weren't familiar with it. For a young man like Wang Chong to be able to draw it out so easily, they were astonished. But how should we do it? It's impossible for such a large-scale mobilization of troops to not attract the attention of the Goguryans. As soon as the army leaves the city gates, King Sojurim will probably be alerted. Ma Yinlong said. Wang Chong's idea was great, but it wasn't practical at all. Who said anything about mobilizing the imperial army from the city? Wang Chong chuckled, a confident look on his face. The Bureau of Military Personnel conducts regular military movements every year, so all we have to do is to send a troop north. When the time comes, we just have to send an elite troop to infiltrate the troops. Bureau of Military Personnel. The four glanced at one another, and they could see the shock in one another's eyes. To mobilize troops through the Bureau of Military Personnel to encircle the Goguryans, this was an unimaginable feat to the four of them. The military was a matter of national importance, and it couldn't be ignored. Every single order from the Bureau of Military Personnel wasn't to be trifled with. To them, what Wang Chong said was something they didn't even dare to imagine. But in Wang Chong's mouth, it seemed like it was nothing at all. It's not that I'm spouting nonsense. Have you ever thought of the consequences if an influential official of the royal court were to be assassinated? In comparison, the mobilization of troops means nothing at all. Orders are dead, but men are alive. If it turns out to be a good thing, the outcome is something that everyone can accept. Besides, this isn't a large-scale mobilization of troops. All we need to do is to fortify the cities closest to the capital. This way, we can minimize the impact. Wang Chong knew what the four of them were thinking, so he explained. The four of them nodded silently. If it was just a mobilization of troops of this scale, they could still accept it. Now, all that's left is King Sojurim. In an instant, the atmosphere turned heavy once more. This time, even Wang Chong fell silent. It wasn't that he didn't want to help, but that he wasn't able to. He had never met King Sojurim before, so he had no idea what the other party looked like. Under such circumstances, even if King Sojurim were to stand before him, Wang Chong probably wouldn't be able to recognize him. The enemy was in the dark while he was out in the open. Not only so, from the few times they had come into contact with King Sojurim from afar, Fox King Chong knew that the other party was a cunning fellow, and he had a deep understanding of the other party's savagery. The monastery before him was the best proof of that. The eagle, I'll be troubling you then. Once the operation begins, release all of your eagles. I want you to keep an eye on every single Gogurian who leaves the battlefield. Not a single one of them is allowed to escape. It has been more than a decade, and you should know that this is our final chance. The eagle, steel arms, and solitary wolf nodded their heads. Their eyes were filled with the ominous glint that made Wang Chong feel uneasy once more. Wang Chong wanted to say something, but in the end, he decided against it. Chapter 256. Regardless of whether it was the Gogurians or Wang Chong's side, both sides had to make their preparations. Even Wang Chong didn't know that the Gogurians had already moved ahead of time. On the other hand, the Gogurians also didn't know that Wang Chong and the others had already discovered their base. However, this wasn't the crux of the matter. Neither side had realized that this had already turned into a race against time. If the Gogurians were to launch their attack a day ahead of time, even if Wang Chong and the others managed to discover their base, they would still be defeated. That monastery was simply too close to the capital. Similarly, if Wang Chong and the others were able to coordinate with the Bureau of Military Personnel before the Gogurians made their move, the Gogurians would surely suffer a crushing defeat. But at this point in time, it was impossible for anyone to conduct reconnaissance or capture the other party's men. That would be too dangerous, and it would easily raise the other party's suspicions. 3 days passed in a flash. It's finally done. In a massive monastery located in the forest outside the capital, a Gogurian dressed in a monk's robe and shaved his head, let out a long sigh of excitement. After a long time, they had finally completed their preparations. All of the elite experts dispatched from the distant Goguryeo Empire to participate in the operation tonight to assassinate the important officials of the Great Tang had all arrived at the monastery. A storm of blood was about to descend upon the Great Tang Empire. Most of the residences of those who could become famous officials of the Tang Empire were heavily guarded and had many experts. It was not easy to assassinate them. This was also the reason why they had to travel such a long distance and mobilize experts from within the empire. To use the resources of an empire to assassinate the officials of another empire, this might be considered an assassination, but to the Gogurians, it was a war. Everyone was prepared for a war. Thus, no matter how much preparation they had, it was inevitable that they would die. Are you all ready? The Gogurian dressed in a monk's robe raised his arm and bellowed. In an instant, a thunderous roar echoed in the surroundings. We're ready. For the Empire, looking down from the sky, one could see that the monk was surrounded by Gogurian elites dressed in black with 3 sabers sheathed on their backs. Only a pair of sharp eyes could be seen, and they were gleaming with fervor, excitement, and fervor. On their bodies, waves of killing intent gathered together, like a landslide or tsunami. After a long period of preparation, which lasted 4 months and traveled across mountains, all the preparations were finally completed. There were more than a few hundred imperial warriors gathered here. The huge temple was densely packed with over 1,000 imperial warriors. Moreover, unlike those imperial soldiers who had been wiped out in the capital, these people were true experts, true elites, handpicked from tens of thousands. 15 years ago, they had set off a storm of blood in the capital of the Tang dynasty with such a large number of elites, shaking the entire Tang dynasty, and most of them had escaped unscathed. Now, everything was about to repeat itself. For Her Majesty. For His Highness. For the glory of Goguryeo. Kill! Amidst a frenzied battle cry, the 1,000 black-clothed and masked Gogurian elites unsheathed the Gogurian sabers on their backs, and a dense forest of sabers pointed toward the sky. Under the starlight, they gleamed coldly. Boom! In the next moment, the Goguryeo elites leaped over the high walls of the temple, charging toward the Tang dynasty's capital. Go, my valiant warriors! Let the blood of the Tang dynasty flow like a river. The wind howled. On the roof of the Buddhist temple, 3 figures with majestic auras stood there like a mountain range. Gazing at the Goguryans charging toward the temple, their eyes gleamed so brightly that even the stars in the sky paled in comparison. Everything had been prepared. A batch of experts had already infiltrated the city, and the tunnel leading in and out of the city had been specially arranged. Even if an accident were to occur and the city guards were to discover it, they would be able to swiftly eliminate the culprit, ensuring that no news would leak out. After this night, the entire Tang dynasty would be shaken, and the distant Goguryeo Empire would be deeply proud of them. Yi! Just as the group was gazing into the distance and daydreaming, a sudden change occurred. In the darkness of the night, a resplendent firework suddenly burst into the sky. The dazzling light and the long tail of smoke that accompanied it could be seen even from far away. It was extremely eye-catching. What's going on? On the roof of the Buddhist temple, the 3 figures with powerful auras that resembled a storm were stunned and dumbfounded. They weren't the only ones. Even the Goguryeo assassins who had leaped over the walls of the temple were dumbfounded. They looked at the sky and subconsciously halted their footsteps. They were in the wilderness, a distance away from the capital. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be such a firework here. Furthermore, this wasn't some festival, so there shouldn't be any fireworks here. In an instant, the entire world fell silent. Even the cheers had vanished, leaving only the howling of the mountain wind. Everyone faintly felt a trace of unease in their hearts. However, it was quiet all around. Other than the firework that shot into the sky, nothing else happened. It felt like an instant, but at the same time, it felt like countless centuries had passed. Just as everyone was thinking that something had happened, in the next moment, Hong Long. The mountains shook as if there was an invisible hand shaking the mountains underground. Countless birds flapped their wings and flew into the sky. Kill! Deafening battle cries reverberated throughout the mountains. Before the shocked gazes of the Goguryans, the Tang dynasty imperial army soldiers charged out from all directions. How is this possible? On the roof of the temple, the faces of the 3 powerful Goguryeo assassins warped in horror, and they nearly fell from the roof. This is impossible. How can there be so many of them? How did they manage to sneak their way here? Where are the scouts? Where are the scouts? Where are all the scouts we have? The Tang people have already sneaked their way here, so why didn't they send any warning back? Be careful. Enemy attack! Shrill, anxious, and furious Goguryeo words echoed in the air, and the Goguryeo army outside the temple fell into chaos. They had thought that they would be facing the guards of the officials' residences, not the regular imperial army of the Tang dynasty. This was no longer an assassination, but a war. Be careful. For the Empire. Clang clang clang. Some of the Goguryeo elites were the first to react. They drew all of their weapons and assumed a defensive and offensive stance. But the ones who reacted even faster than them were the Tang dynasty. Boom boom boom. Before the Goguryeo elites could even react, their chests were pierced by thick metal arrows, and they were pinned to the ground. Master archers! Be careful! There's a master archer! A shrill scream echoed in the air. But as soon as it sounded, it died down. The Goguryon's forehead was pierced by an arrow, and his body was pinned to the ground. Defend! Defend! Those who were deployed here were all elites. After the initial ambush, they immediately scattered and searched for cover before swiftly retreating to the back. Their bodies changed indeterminately, flickering and twisting between the branches. Their movement techniques were so fast and nimble that ordinary people couldn't compare to them at all. Kill! Before they could retreat to the Buddhist temple, warhorses neighed as the first wave of imperial cavalrymen, who had carried out the first mission of delaying their opponents, arrived. These warhorses were wrapped in iron armor, and each of them was incredibly tall. Their sturdy bodies contained monstrous strength, and even the trees in their way were smashed to pieces. Their momentum was unstoppable, and they swept away everything in their way. Hong long long. In just an instant, the two forces clashed with one another. Two different war halos lit up simultaneously before clashing heavily with one another. The immense force from the collision shattered the surrounding trees into pieces. Thousands of wooden shards flew several dozen zhang into the air. Congratulations to user for killing 691 Gogurians. Congratulations to user for killing 692 Gogurians. In an instant, a furious gale blew. On a distant hill, Wang Chong was standing beneath a huge tree. That familiar voice sounded in his ears once more, and a huge wave of information gushed into his mind. The bane of the battlefield halo in Wang Chong's body grew stronger once more. A war-related halo. Indeed, it's best to grow in battle. Amidst the furious gale, Wang Chong felt his strength growing at a rapid pace. Every single cell in his body was relaxed, and he felt incredibly comfortable. This method of growing his strength without using anything at all was simply too exhilarating. It's a pity that I'm only one of the commanders in this battle. The true commander is that person over there. Wang Chong turned his head to look in another direction. It was an Imperial Army general riding on a huge steed with a cold expression on his face. His eyes were staring straight ahead, and he exuded an intense aura of steel and blood. Clearly, he had participated in large-scale battles before. This was a direct assignment from the royal court. Even though Wang Chong had the favor of the King of Song, he wasn't a member of the Imperial Army. Furthermore, in order to prevent the Gogurians from escaping, the Imperial Army had mobilized too many Imperial Army soldiers. Thus, there was a need for a high-ranking Imperial Army general to command the troops. He was the true commander of the battle. Thus, the benefits that Wang Chong received were unavoidably diluted. However, it was fortunate that Wang Chong had the King of Song's token, and this base was discovered by Wang Chong. Thus, Wang Chong was still able to reap the greatest benefits from it. It's fortunate that I called Uncle in. Good things should not flow to outsiders. After this encirclement and suppression, Uncle will definitely be promoted again. With this contribution, his seniority will far surpass the others, and it's only a matter of time before he rises in the ranks of the Imperial Army. Wang Chong turned his head to look at Uncle Li Lin, who was leading the army toward the monastery, and a smile crept onto his lips. Chapter 257. Brothers, charge! Don't get tangled up. Remember, our target is King Sojurim. No matter what, we mustn't let him escape. Just as Wang Chong was deep in thought, a loud bellow suddenly sounded by his ears. Following which, the clopping of hooves sounded. Before Wang Chong could stop them, he saw Ma Yinlong, Solitary Wolf, Steel Arms, and Old Eagle galloping toward the monastery with reddened eyes. A cloud of dust billowed behind them as they charged toward the monastery. Fast! In their eagerness to kill the enemy, Wang Chong wanted to delay their arrival a little, but it was already too late. After pondering for a moment, he decided to just let them be. It would be a wonder if the four of them could hold themselves back for so many years. In the distance, the battle was already nearing the vicinity of the monastery. Boom! Suddenly, the ground trembled. Before Wang Chong could react, he felt a powerful surge of energy gushing out from the direction of the monastery. Wherever the invisible surge of energy passed by, bizarre changes would occur. Under Wang Chong's vision, the feet of the Gogurian assassins suddenly lit up, and a bizarre halo of thorns burst forth. Then, a second, and a third. The monastery shook 3 times, and 3 different halos of different colors lit up beneath the feet of the Gogurian assassins. Generals! There's a Gogurian general in the monastery. Everyone on the hill was stunned when they saw the halos that lit up in the darkness. Even Wang Chong couldn't help but blink his eyes in astonishment. Generals who had cultivated their war halo to a certain level would be able to imbue their own war halo to their subordinates. This was one of the unique traits of war halo. This was also the origin of the name of war halo. However, this ability wasn't something that everyone could imbue. Only formidable generals who had reached a certain level of cultivation were able to do so. Regardless of which empire it was, be it Goguryeo, the Tang dynasty, Uzun, or Abbasid Caliphate, these generals were extremely influential figures. They wouldn't be as insignificant as ordinary soldiers who could be sacrificed casually. If a general of such caliber were to die here, it would be a huge loss to Goguryeo. The Goguryans have really gone all out. Wang Chong sneered and quickly realized what was going on. Without a doubt, this should be the masterpiece of the leaders of the monastery that Eagle had observed. The fact that the Goguryans had even sent out their most orthodox generals showed just how determined they were to succeed in this operation. Indeed, compared to the open battle on the battlefield, this kind of covert battle had a smaller investment, but the rewards were much greater. Boom! While the three Goguryan commanders on the rooftop of the monastery released their war halos to envelop all of the Goguryans, on the other side, not too far away from Wang Chong, the imperial army general who was in charge of this operation stepped forward on his steed and released his war halo as well. Rings of dazzling light immediately burst forth, enveloping all of the imperial army soldiers. Kill! In the distance, a furious gale blew, and battle cries echoed in the air. Halos collided with halos, and stellar energy collided with stellar energy. The two powerful forces clashed with one another, and the battle swiftly grew more intense. On the surface, the Tang dynasty held the absolute advantage, but the resistance of the Goguryans was extremely intense. The expected scene of the Goguryans collapsing didn't happen. The complicated terrain of the mountains and the dense forest were all things that they borrowed from. On top of that, these Goguryans were all elites with swift and agile movement techniques. On top of that, their ferocious and ruthless three-saber stream actually managed to form a defensive formation, and they didn't collapse. Are you still intending to put up a resistance? Wang Chong sneered coldly. The stubbornness of the Goguryans was truly ingrained in their bones. No matter how bad the situation was, they would still go berserk, determined to bite down on the other party. It was the same for a one-on-one fight, and it was the same for a group attack. However, if the Goguryans thought that they would be able to deal with so many enemies with just 1,000 top-notch elites and the complicated terrain, they were truly naive. Wang Chong abruptly stomped on the ground. Hong long long, the world shook. In an instant, Wang Chong released the bane of the battlefield halo, and an invisible ripple spread across the entire mountain range with Wang Chong at the center. But this time, the target of the ripple wasn't the imperial army but the opposing Goguryans. Wang! Wherever the ripple passed, the halos beneath the feet of the Goguryans would vanish. This abrupt change shook the entire army. The orderly Goguryan army immediately fell into chaos. Without the support of the halos, the Goguryans suffered heavy casualties in an instant. Not too far away, sensing the changes on the battlefield, the cold imperial army general turned his head to look at Wang Chong from afar, and a peculiar glint flashed across his eyes. However, Wang Chong didn't have the luxury of time to explain himself. He heard that familiar voice once more. Congratulations to user for killing 721 soldiers of the Goguryan Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 722 soldiers of the Goguryan Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 723 soldiers of the Goguryan Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 834 soldiers of the Goguryan Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 835 soldiers of the Goguryan Empire. A huge surge of information flowed into Wang Chong's mind, and the bane of the battlefield halo in his body grew significantly. Aren't they being too naive if they think that they can fight against the imperial army in the territory of the Tang dynasty? Wang Chong chuckled. With him around, the Gogurians were truly naive to think that they could put up a resistance with their elites. He wouldn't give them the chance to do so. Mayase Mayaka, tell them to prepare themselves. We'll be setting off at any moment to join the battlefield. Wang Chong said. Yes, Gongzi. Mayase Mayaka nodded and quickly left. In this battle, Wang Chong didn't have much authority. The main commanding authority still lay in the hands of the general of the imperial army. Even so, Wang Chong still used the token from the king of Song to request for a contingent of imperial army soldiers to be under his command. Even though Wang Chong didn't have an official rank, no one here could surpass him in terms of strategy and seizing opportunities. Seeking peace through war and replacing retreat with offense, these Gogurians sure are smart. They know that fleeing at this moment will only lead to their deaths. By then, none of them will be able to escape. Thus, they should gather their men to form a defense before finding a way to break out of the encirclement. It's a good idea, but a pity that it's not practical. Wang Chong sneered coldly. This batch of Gogurians was indeed formidable. Given their strength, it was possible for them to gather their men to fend off the attack before organizing their men to break out of the encirclement. However, with him around, they were thinking too much. He wouldn't give them the chance to do so. Trying to scheme before him was no different from playing around. Gongzi, I've gathered everyone. Soon, a voice sounded behind him. Mayase Mayaka was kneeling on the ground with her head lowered, not moving in the slightest. Behind him, a group of about 100 Imperial Army cavalrymen rode their horses and slowly appeared on the hill. These people were well-built, had determined gazes, and powerful auras. Every single one of them exuded the aura of 100. They were all elites of the Imperial Army, specially selected by Wang Chong from the Imperial Army. Get ready. Arrow formation. Wang Chong led a horse over, leaped onto it, and drew his sword. His gaze was sharp, and his wrist was straight. Upon seeing Wang Chong's silhouette, a grim expression appeared on the faces of the Imperial Army cavalrymen. When they first followed Wang Chong, they were worried that Wang Chong would blindly command them. But judging from Wang Chong's disposition when he gave the order, they realized that they were overthinking it. At this moment, the feeling that Wang Chong exuded was that of a veteran general. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Wang Chong gazed into the distance, not moving in the slightest. After an unknown period of time, just when everyone thought that Wang Chong's respect would never come down, the long-awaited order finally appeared. Kill! Like ferocious tigers charging down the mountain, the 100 Imperial Army cavalrymen surrounded Wang Chong, Mayase Mayaka, and Mayase Mayaka. As though arrows released from a bow, they charged down the hill furiously. Hung long long. The ground rumbled, and the silhouettes on both sides retreated as swiftly as bolts of lightning. The wind howled shrilly in Wang Chong's ears. As Wang Chong listened to the deafening roar, the thundering of hooves and the neighing of warhorses, the blazing flames in the distance and the cold glint of weapons, a voice seemed to roar in his mind, and he felt like all the blood in his body was boiling. In an instant, his consciousness seemed to have transcended time and space. Once again, Wang Chong felt a calling from the depths of his soul, a calling from the battlefield. He belonged to this place, to the battlefield. Wang! As though a miracle, a gap suddenly appeared in the formation of the Gogurians. Hung long. In the next instant, the 100-plus cavalrymen led by Wang Chong stabbed into the gap like a sharp knife, ripping it apart. The immense might of the rear charge even flung the Gogurian assassins high up into the air. Kill! A deafening roar reverberated across the sky. In just an instant, the Gogurian formation had been torn into two, and the formation that they had just stabilized with great difficulty immediately fell into chaos. Bastard! At the top of the monastery, the faces of the Goguryeo leaders who were observing the situation from a high vantage point immediately warped. Wang Chang's charge had completely destroyed their previous efforts. The trio's faces were cold. They wanted to destroy this army, but soon, they couldn't be bothered about anything else. Because the Tang people's army was already charging over ferociously. This time, the trio joined the fray. Get ready. There's still one more time. In the distance, Wang Chong, who had just pierced through the Goguryeo formation, led his elite cavalrymen and stopped on the opposite hill. From Wang Chong's perspective, the Goguryons were still gathering their formation, and they were preparing to regroup once more. But to Wang Chong, as long as he pierced through their formation twice, all of the Goguryons would be routed. Assassination was one thing, but war was another. The Goguryons had already fallen into his rhythm. Prepare for the second attack. Hong Long. When Wang Chong led the 100-plus elites to pierce through the Goguryeo formation for the second time, the 1,000-plus Goguryeo elites finally crumbled. They were no longer able to form a proper formation to defend themselves. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.